Hey guys, tonight, we're not chasing knights through misty forests or sailing stormy seas with Viking raiders. No, you're stepping into the golden, sun-baked heart of ancient Egypt, where the Nile River hums like a lullaby and every grain of sand holds a secret older than time itself. Close your eyes. Feel it. You're standing on a warm, muddy bank, toes sinking into the cool silt. The air's heavy with the scent of blooming lotus and baked earth. A papyrus boat glides silently past. And somewhere, a jackal howls, like it's warning you to tread lightly in this land of gods and crocodiles. This is Egypt, around 2500 BCE, a world where pharaohs are living gods. Temples touch the stars. And you? Well, you're just trying not to trip over a sacred scarab or anger a deity with a falcon's head. Truth is, you probably wouldn't last a week here. Forget to bow to a statue, and you're cursed. Step on a cat, and the village might stone you. So, before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment below with where you're listening from and what time it is. It's strangely comforting to know who else is out there, drifting off to stories of linen kilts and desert nights. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, soothing hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're no noble, no priest, with a shaved head, chanting spells. You're an ordinary Egyptian, maybe a farmer, maybe a weaver, living in a dusty village near Thebes, where the Nile is your lifeline, your calendar, your everything. The river sparkles under a sun that burns like it's got a personal grudge against you. Across the water, limestone cliffs glow like molten gold, and a temple's silhouette looms, its columns carved with gods who never blink. Your home's a humble mud brick hut, walls cracked from years of heat, roof woven from palm fronds that rustle in the night breeze. Inside, it's cozy, cramped, smelling of straw, lentils, and the faint musk of the goat you keep out back. Your family's there, your spouse kneading dough, your kids giggling over a clay toy hippopotamus. And then there's the cat, lounging like royalty on your only stool. Cats are sacred to Bastet, goddess of protection. Harm one, and you're done. You heard about a guy who accidentally kicked a kitten. The mob didn't even wait for an apology. Let's just say he's not trading onions at the market anymore. The Nile runs this world. Every summer, it floods, spilling black, fertile silt across the fields. This is the mainstream fact. Those floods made Egypt an agricultural powerhouse, letting farmers grow enough barley and wheat to feed millions, while scribes tallied it all for the pharaoh. Without the Nile, there'd be no pyramids, no sphinx, no golden masks for mummified kings. But the river's moody, too much water, and your crops drown, too little, and your kids go hungry. You've seen lean years when people boiled reeds for soup and prayed for Hapi, the Nile's god, to show mercy. Here's a lesser-known detail. Egyptians believed the Nile flowed straight from the underworld, a sacred stream linking the living to the Dua, where souls faced Osiris's judgment. Fishermen swore that if you swam at midnight, you might glimpse ghostly lights under the water, spirits riding the current to eternity. You don't test that theory. The Nile's too alive, too watchful, for you to take chances. You step outside, linen kilt, scratching your legs. It's your one outfit, patched, faded, but light enough to survive the heat. Sandals dream on. Those cost more than your last harvest. Your feet are calloused, tough as leather. though you flinch when a pebble jabs your heel. The village hums with life. Women balance water jars on their heads, graceful as dancers. A kid chases a donkey, shouting like he's a chariot racer. An old man grumbles about the price of flax. And you nod, joking, he should barter with a god for a better deal. He chuckles. But you both know, the gods don't haggle. You pass a shrine to Hathor, goddess of love. Her clay statue adorned with a wilted flower. You don't have offerings. So you bow, hoping she's not keeping score. Religion's not optional here. It's survival. Skip a ritual, and you might bring locusts or worse. Historians still argue whether everyday Egyptians truly feared every god or just played along to avoid trouble. You're not risking it. Last month, a neighbor swore he saw Anubis in a dust storm. Now everyone's doubling their prayers. Your stomach rumbles, loud enough to wake a mummy. Breakfast's coming. But first, you've got fields to check. You grab a worn wooden hoe, its handle smooth from years of sweat, and head to the riverbank. The air's alive with the croak of frogs, the chirp of birds, the soft slap of water against reeds. A fisherman waves from his boat, and you wave back, though you're pretty sure he borrowed your basket last week. Village life's like that. Everyone's kin, until a chicken goes missing. The sun's climbing, and you're already sweating through your kilt. You joke to yourself that Ra, the sun god, must love roasting mortals for fun. Somewhere, a priest's chant echoes from a temple, a reminder the gods are always listening. Or at least, you hope they are. You've got a long day ahead. But for now, you dig your hoe into the soft earth, feeling the Nile's pulse beneath you. This is your Egypt, a land of mud, magic, and endless work. Welcome to it. Section 2. Morning by the Nile. You wake to the Nile's gentle murmur. A soft, constant hum that's been lulling your village to sleep for centuries. It's barely dawn, and the air's still cool, carrying the damp scent of river mud and dew-soaked reeds. You're sprawled on a reed mat in your mud-brick hut, the straw poking your back, like it's personally offended by your attempt to rest. Outside, a rooster crows with the enthusiasm of someone who doesn't have to plow fields today. You groan, stretch, and immediately regret it. Your spine cracks like a papyrus scroll left in the sun too long. The room's dim, lit only by slivers of light sneaking through the palm frond roof. Your family's already stirring. Your spouse is fanning a clay oven to life. Your youngest kid is giggling at the cat, who's batting a beetle across the floor like it's a royal game. You sit up, careful not to knock over the water jar by your mat. Last thing you need is to start the day mopping up a flood in a house that's already half mud. You stumble to the doorway, rubbing sleep from your eyes. The Nile's right there, a shimmering ribbon cutting through the desert. Its banks lined with green barley fields and swaying papyrus. A heron stands statue still, eyeing the water like it's plotting a heist. You splash your face with river water, cool and gritty, hoping it washes away the fog in your head. Hygiene's a luxury. Here soaps for nobles. And your toothbrush is a frayed stick you chew to scrape your teeth clean. You're not exactly minty fresh. But in a world where everyone smells like sweat and lentils, you blend right in. You joke to yourself that if the gods wanted you cleaner, they'd send a rainstorm. Fat chance in this desert. The Nile's more than a river. It's Egypt's pulse. Mainstream fact by 2500 BCE. The Nile's annual floods had turned Egypt into an agricultural giant, producing surplus grain that fed cities and built empires. The black silt left behind was so fertile you could practically sneeze and grow a crop. But here's a lesser-known detail. Egyptians used the river's flow to measure time, building nilometers, stone steps along the banks, to track water levels and predict floods. Too high, and your village drowns. Too low, and you're eating dust for dinner. You glance at the nearest millimeter. Its steps worn smooth by priests who check it like it's a divine text message. You don't read hieroglyphs, but you know a low river means trouble. And you mutter a quick prayer to Happy, hoping he's feeling generous. You pull on your linen kilt, the same one you wore yesterday, and probably tomorrow. It's stiff with dirt, but it's light enough to keep you from melting when the sun gets serious. Sandals are a dream for someone with your budget. So you brace your calloused feet for another day of pebbles and hot sand. Your stomach's already grumbling, loud enough to scare off that heron. Breakfast's coming. But first, you've got to check your fields. You grab your wooden hoe, its handle polished by years of your sweat, and head out. The village is waking up. Women trudge to the river with clay jars. Kids chase a stray dog. And your neighbour's already arguing with his donkey, who's clearly winning. You nod to him, joking that his donkey's smarter than half the priests in Thebes. He laughs. But you both know the day's about to get serious. The gods are never far here. You pass a small shrine to Sobek, the crocodile god, where someone's left a fish head as an offering. You don't have fish to spare, so you bow your head, hoping Sobek doesn't take it personally. Religion's woven into every moment. Skip an offering, and you might wake up to a snake in your mat. Historians still argue whether Egyptians genuinely feared every deity or just followed rituals to keep the community happy. You're not taking chances. Last week, a fisherman swore he saw Sobek's green eyes in the river at dusk. And now everyone's double-checking their prayers. You're not sure if it's true, but you're not about to go swimming to find out. Your field's a short walk away. A small patch of black silt hugged by the river. The floods receded, leaving the soil soft and ready for planting. You'll sow barley soon. Maybe flax if you can scrape together the seeds. The work's brutal hours of bending, digging, sweating under a sun that doesn't care about your back pain. But it's yours. And that counts for something. You kneel, running your fingers through the dirt, feeling it's cool. Dumb promise. A flock of ibis birds picks through the mud nearby, their curved beaks poking like they're auditing your soil. You smile, joking to yourself that they're Ra's spies, reporting back to the sun god. Ra's probably too busy driving his solar boat across the sky to care about your barley. But you keep that thought quiet. The air's warming fast, and you wipe sweat from your brow. You're already dreaming of breakfast, maybe a hunk of flatbread and a sip of beer, even if it tastes like fermented regret. You glance at the Nile, where a fisherman's hauling a net, his boat wobbling like it's one wave away from disaster. He waves, and you wave back, though you're still annoyed about that borrowed basket. Village life's like that. Everyone's family until someone's goat wanders off. You start digging, the hoe sinking into the earth with a satisfying thud. The river's song hums in the background. And for a moment, it's just you, the Nile, and the quiet hope that today won't end with a scorpion in your kilt. You work steadily, the rhythm of the hoe matching your breath. A breeze stirs the reeds, carrying the faint chant of a priest from a distant temple. It's a reminder that the gods are always watching, or at least, you hope they are. You've got a long day ahead. And you're not looking to make enemies with any deities. You joke to yourself that if Anubis shows up, you'll offer him your neighbour's donkey. The gods probably don't want that stubborn beast either. But it's worth a try. For now, do you focus on the soil, the river, the life you're carving out, one row at a time. The sun's climbing, the village is buzzing, and you're already counting down to that shady sycamore tree at noon. Keep moving, and maybe you'll survive another day in Egypt's unrelenting embrace. Section 3. Breakfast of bread and beer. You pause your work in the field, the hoe resting against your shoulder as the sun creeps higher, already turning the cool morning into a memory. Your stomach's growling louder than a jackal at dusk, and you can't ignore it anymore. Breakfast's calling, and in ancient Egypt, that means trudging back to your mud brick hut for something simple, filling, and just a little gritty. You wipe the sweat from your brow, leaving a streak of Nile silt across your face, and head toward the village. The air smells of warm earth and river water, with a faint whiff of smoke from clay ovens firing up. Reeds sway along the path, brushing your legs like they're whispering gossip about last night's festival. You pass a neighbor hauling a basket of fish, his tunic soaked from the river. You nod, joking that he smells like Sobek's personal chef. He grins. But you both know there's no time for chatter. Hunger's a demanding boss. Back at your hut, you duck under the low doorway. The cool shade, a brief mercy, after the sun's relentless stare. Your spouse is kneeling by the oven, a flat clay slab, glowing with embers. The air's thick with the nutty scent of baking bread, mingled with the sour tang of fermenting beer. Your kids are sprawled on the floor, one poking at the cat, who's ignoring them with divine indifference. You collapse onto a stool, your kilt sticking to your thighs, and survey the feast well. Feast is a generous word. Breakfast in Egypt isn't a spread of pastries and fruit. It's bread, beer, and maybe an onion if you're feeling fancy. Mainstream fact by 2500 BCE. Bread and beer were dietary staples for all Egyptians, from peasants to pharaohs, made from barley or emmer wheat, and often consumed together as a meal. They were so central that workers on the pyramids were paid in bread and beer rations, a currency tastier than gold. You grab a hunk of flatbread, still warm from the oven. It's densy, coarse, and speckled with bits of chaff that crunch between your teeth like tiny pebbles. Egyptians grind grain with stone mills, and nobody's sifting out the grit your dentist, if such a thing existed, would weep. You chew slowly, partly to savor it, partly to avoid chipping a tooth. The bread's nutty, almost sweet, but it's a workout for your jaw. You joke to yourself that this is why Egyptians have stronger chins than gods. Next comes the beer, poured from a clay jar into a chipped cup. It's not the crisp lager you'd dream of, it's thick, murky, like liquid bread with a sour kick. You sip, wincing at the taste, but it's safer than river water, which might carry more surprises than fish. Here's a lesser-known detail. Egyptian beer, called henkit, was often flavored with dates or herbs and left to ferment in open jars, attracting flies that brewers considered good luck. You're not thrilled about the fly garnish, but you drink anyway. Your spouse slides you a couple of green onions. Their tops wilted, but the bulb's still crisp. You bite into one, the sharp bite cutting through the bread's heaviness. It's not much, but it's enough to keep you going until midday. Your youngest kid eyes your bread, and you tear off a piece, handing it over with a mock glare. They giggle, crumbs already on their chin, and you shake your head, joking that they'll eat your whole harvest if you're not careful. The cat watches, tail flicking, probably plotting to steal the next loaf. You're grateful for the food, though some mornings the jar's empty, and you're splitting a single onion between 5 mouths. The Nile's floods are generous, but droughts and pests don't care about your prayers to Osiris. You lean back, sipping the last of your beer, the jar's cool clay soothing your calloused hands. Outside, the village hums, donkeys bray, women laugh by the river. A potter's wheel whirs like a distant lullaby. You glance at the shrine in the corner, a small clay figure of Bes, the dwarf god who guards households. You don't have offerings today, but you nod to him, hoping he'll keep scorpions out of your mat tonight. Religions everywhere, even at breakfast. Skip a prayer, and you might find a snake in your breadbasket. Historians still argue whether Egyptians ate bread and beer for nutrition or because they had no choice. Given the limited crops, you don't care about the debate, you eat what's here, and you're glad it's not papyrus stalks, the bread sitting heavy in your stomach. A solid weight that'll carry you through the morning's work. You're tempted to linger, maybe tease your spouse about their lopsided loaves. But the fields won't wait. You stand, brushing crumbs from your kilt, and grab your hoe. Your spouse mutters something about fixing the roof before the next flood. And you promise to help knowing you'll probably forget. Village life's a juggling act, fields, family, gods, and the ever-present threat of a hippo wandering into your barley. You joke that if Ra gave you an extra hour in the day, you'd spend it napping under a sycamore. Ra's probably too busy driving his sunboat to care about your sleep schedule. Though, you step outside. The sun now, a golden disk, climbing the sky. The Nile glitters, its surface rippling like it's laughing at your to-do list. A fisherman's boat bobs nearby, and you wave, still side-eyeing him over that missing basket. The air's warming fast, and you feel the first prickle of sweat on your neck. You head back to your field. Who in hunt? The taste of beer lingering on your tongue. The village fades behind you, replaced by the river's soft song and the rustle of reeds. You're already thinking about lunch, maybe some dates if the market's kind, but for now, it's you and the earth, digging rows under the gods' watchful eyes. You're not building pyramids or sailing to punt, but you're feeding your family. And that's a kind of immortality. 2. The work ahead feels endless, but the bread and beer give you a quiet strength. You sink your hoe into the silt, the rhythm steadying your thoughts. A flock of ibis birds struts through the mud, their beaks probing like they're inspecting your progress. You smile, wondering if they're spies for Thoth, the god of wisdom. Probably not. They're just after worms. The Nile's hum fills the air, a reminder of the river that feeds you, floods you, and maybe even judges you. You keep digging, one row at a time, the sun climbing higher, the day stretching out like an unwritten scroll. Breakfast's over, but Egypt's just waking up, and you've got no choice but to keep pace. Section 4. Toil in the fields. You're back in the field, the taste of gritty bread and sour beer still lingering as you grip your wooden hoe. The Nile's soft hum is your only company, its waters glinting under a sun that's now high enough to make you sweat through your linen kilt. The air smells of damp silt and green shoots, with a faint tang of fish from a nearby fisherman's net. Your patch of land is small, a rectangle of black earth carved out by the river's floods. But it's yours to work, and it's demanding. You dig the hoe into the soil, the blade sinking with a satisfying thud, turning over clumps of mud that'll soon cradle barley seeds. Your back aches already, a dull throb from yesterday's labor. But you keep moving. Pause too long, and the foreman might dock your rations or worse. The gods might notice you're slacking. You joke to yourself that Ra's probably got a scroll listing every time you stop to scratch your nose. The field's alive with small sounds, the rustle of reeds, the chirp of sparrows, the distant bray of a donkey who's clearly had enough of its owner. An ibis struts nearby, its curved beak probing the mud like it's auditing your work. You give it a wary glance, half wondering if it's Thoth in disguise, checking your progress for the divine ledger. Probably not. It's just after worms. But you're not taking chances. You mutter a quick prayer to Renenutit, goddess of the harvest, asking for strong crops and no locusts this season. Farming's a gamble in Egypt. The Nile gives, but it doesn't guarantee. Too much water and your seeds rot, too little, and you're bartering your kilt for a handful of onions. Mainstream fact, by 2500 BCE. Egyptian agriculture was a cornerstone of the civilization, with farmers cultivating barley, emmer wheat, and flax on the Nile's fertile floodplains to feed millions and fund Pharaoh's monuments. The surplus grain was so vital it was stored in state granaries, guarded like gold. But here's a lesser-known detail. Farmers often used shadoofs, simple wooden levers with buckets, to lift water from the Nile into irrigation channels. You've got one nearby. Its counterweight creaking as you haul water to keep the soil moist. It's backbreaking, but it's better than carrying jars on your head like the women do. You've tried it once, spilled half the water, and got laughed at by your kids. Never again. You work in a rhythm. Hoeing, stepping, hoeing, stepping. The motion as steady as the river's flow. Sweat trickles down your neck, soaking your kilt, and you wipe your brow with a dirt-streaked arm. The sun's relentless, and you're already dreaming of the sycamore's shade at noon. Your neighbour's in the next field, his hoe flashing as he works his own plot. You shout a greeting, joking that his barley looks like it's auditioning for a famine. He fires back that your field's so patchy it could be a leopard's hide. You both laugh, but there's truth in the jabs. Every harvest's a test, and failure means hungry kids. You've seen families lose their land to debt, forced to work for nobles or temples. You're determined to keep your plot, even if it means digging until your hands blister. The foreman's shadow falls across your row, his linen tunic cleaner than yours will ever be. He's got a reed whip tucked in his belt, more for show than use. But you straighten up anyway. He nods, muttering about Kotas, and moves on. You exhale, relieved he didn't find a reason to complain. Foremen report to scribes, who report to nobles, who report to Pharaoh. Mess up. And you're not just failing your family, you're failing the gods. Historians still argue whether Egyptian farmers were exploited serfs or proud stewards of the land. You don't care about the label, you know the work's brutal, but it's what keeps the Nile's promise alive. You're not growing grain for glory, you're growing it so your kids don't cry themselves to sleep. A breeze stirs, cooling your skin for a blessed moment, and you pause to stretch, your spine popping like a festival firecracker. The ibis is still there, now joined by a friend, both pecking the mud like they're discussing your technique. You chuckle, joking that they're plotting a takeover of your field. Egypt's full of animals that feel sacred: ibis for Thoth, cats for Bastet, even the crocodiles you avoid in the river. Last month, a neighbour swore he saw a falcon circling his field, a sign of Horus's favour. You haven't seen any falcons, but you'll settle for no snakes today. You glance at the Nile, its waters lapping the bank like a gentle reminder of who's really in charge here. A fisherman's boat bobs nearby, and you wave, still annoyed about that borrowed basket. You'll settle that score at the market, maybe over a beer. The work's monotonous, but there's a quiet pride in it. Each row you hoe is a step toward harvest, toward bread on your table, toward surviving another year. You think of your kids, their laughter when you toss them in the air after a long day. You think of your spouse, their tired smile when you bring home a fish from the market. These are the stakes, small but heavy, that keep your hoe moving. The sun's climbing higher, and you're already craving that midday rest. You joke to yourself that if the gods gave you a day off, if you'd spend it fishing, then you remember the hippos and decide napping's safer. The Nile's hum fills the air, a song older than the pyramids, and you sink your hoe into the earth again. One row closer to noon, you notice a faint hum of voices from the village women singing as they carry water, kids shouting over a game of sticks. It's a reminder that life goes on. Even under the sun's hammer, you glance at the shadoof, its bucket swaying like it's daring you to haul more water. You sigh, grab it, and pull, the cool splash soaking your feet as it spills into the channel. The soil drinks it greedily, and you feel a flicker of satisfaction. This is your world, mud, sweat, and the Nile's endless cycle. You're not carving sphinxes or sailing to Punt, but you're feeding Egypt. One handful of dirt at a time, the ibis duo waddles off, apparently satisfied with their inspection. And you keep working. The river's song in your ears, the god's eyes on your back, and the faint hope that today's labor won't end with a scorpion in your sandals. Section 5. The gods are watching. You're still in the field. Your hoe sinking into the Nile's rich silt. Each swing, a small defiance against the sun's relentless heat. Sweat beads on your forehead, dripping into your eyes. And you pause to wipe it away with a dirt-streaked arm. The air hums with the Nile's soft lapping and the distant chatter of ibis birds picking through the mud. Your kilt's soaked, sticking to your thighs, and your back screaming for a break. But you keep going. The gods are always watching, and slacking off might earn you a curse, or at least a glare from the foreman. You glance at the river, its waters glinting like a mirror for the divine, and feel a prickle of unease. Egypt's gods aren't distant figures in the sky. They're here, in the reeds, the falcons overhead, the very soil you're digging. You mutter a quick prayer to Renenutit, hoping your barley grows strong, and joke to yourself that if she's not impressed, maybe you'll offer her your neighbor's stubborn donkey instead. You straighten up, stretching your aching spine, and notice a small shrine at the field's edge. A weathered stone, carved with Anubis's jackal head. Someone's left a crust of bread at its base, already swarmed by ants. You don't have bread to spare, but you bow your head, whispering, "Thanks for keeping the jackals away from your goats last night." Religion's not a Sunday ritual here. It's woven into every breath, every step. Forget an offering, and you might wake to a scorpion in your mat, or a flood that wipes out your crop. Mainstream fact: by 2500 BCE, ancient Egyptians had a complex polytheistic religion, with over 2,000 deities governing everything from the sun's rise to the harvest's yield. Worshipped through daily rituals and grand festivals, temples were economic hubs. 2. Owning land and collecting grain, which funded Pharaoh's projects. But here's a lesser-known detail. Ordinary Egyptians often kept small household shrines, like the one for Bees or Hathor in your hut, where they'd leave bits of food or cheap amulets to ward off evil spirits. You've got a clay Bees figure at home, his tongue sticking out to scare off demons. It hasn't failed you yet, unless you count that time a snake slithered into your water jar. You resume hoeing, the rhythm steadying your thoughts. But your mind's on the gods. Anubis, with his dark eyes, judges the dead, weighing their hearts against a feather. You're not planning to meet him soon, but you're careful not to offend. Last month, a neighbor swore he saw Anubis's silhouette in a sandstorm, and now everyone's leaving extra offerings. You're skeptical, but you're not about to test it by skipping prayers. You pass the shrine again, noticing a fresh lotus flower tucked beside the bread. Probably the foreman's wife. She's always fussing over Anubis, hoping he'll guide her late son to the afterlife. You nod respectfully, joking to yourself that if Anubis is taking requests, you'd like a new pair of sandals. The gods probably don't care about your blistered feet. Though, the Nile's hum fills the air, a reminder of Happy, the river's god, who brings the floods you depend on. You've seen priests pour beer into the river during festivals, chanting for Happy's favor. You can't afford beer for offerings, but you toss a pebble into the water, hoping it counts. Every act's a prayer here, ploughing fields, baking bread, even arguing with your neighbor over a stray goat. Historians still argue whether Egyptians genuinely believed every god was present, or if rituals were just social glue to keep villages in line. You don't have time for debates. You know what happens when the gods are ignored: locusts, fevers, or a hippo trampling your barley. You're not risking it. Not when your kids need to eat. A shadow passes overhead, and you look up to see a falcon circling, its wings slicing the blue sky. Your heart skips. Horus, the sky god, is said to take falcon form. Is it a sign? Probably just a bird hunting lunch. But you bow your head anyway, whispering, "Thanks for protection." You're not taking chances. You've heard stories of men struck by lightning for mocking Horus, their fields burned to ash. You joke to yourself that if Horus wants to smite someone, your neighbor's donkey is a better target. The falcon wheels away, and you exhale, relieved it didn't linger. The gods are fickle, and you're just a farmer with a hoe and a prayer. You keep working, the sun climbing higher, turning the field into a furnace. Your hands are raw, blisters forming where the hoe's handle rubs. You glance at the shadow nearby, its bucket swaying like it's taunting you to haul more water. You sigh, grab it, and pull, the cool splash soaking your feet as it spills into the irrigation channel. The soil drinks greedily, and you feel a flicker of pride. This is your fight against drought, pests, and the gods' whims. You're not building pyramids, but you're feeding Egypt, one row at a time. A kid runs past, waving a stick like he's battling a lion. You smile, shouting that he'd better not scare your barley. He laughs, darting off, and you shake your head, remembering when you were that carefree. Not any more. Fields don't plough themselves. The village hums in the distance, women singing by the river, a potter's wheel whirring, a donkey braying like it's auditioning for a tragedy. You spot your neighbor in his field, his hoe flashing in the sun. You wave, joking that his crops look like they're praying for mercy. He fires back that your field's so dry it could double as a desert. You both chuckle. But there's truth in the barbs. Every harvest's a gamble, and losing means hunger. You've seen families sell their kids to temples when crops fail. You're determined to keep your plot, even if it means working until your bones ache. The sun's nearing its peak, and you're counting down to that sycamore's shade. You joke to yourself that if Ra gave you a day off, you'd spend it napping by the river. Then you remember crocodiles and decide your mat's safer. The Nile's song weaves through the air, a lullaby older than the gods themselves. You sink your hoe into the earth, feeling the river's pulse beneath you. An ibis waddles by, ignoring you, and you smile, wondering if it's reporting to Thoth. You're just a farmer. But in Egypt, every act's a dance with the divine. Keep moving, keep praying, and maybe you'll survive another day under the gods' unblinking gaze. Section: the 6th of March. Ket, chaos in Thebes. You've been hoeing your field all morning, the Nile's silt clinging to your sweat-soaked kilt as the sun hammers down like it's trying to forge you into a statue. Your hands ache, blistered from the wooden handle, and your stomach starting to grumble again. That meager breakfast of bread and beer, a distant memory. The foreman's long gone, but you feel the god's eyes, maybe Horus in that falcon still circling overhead, urging you to keep moving. You pose, leaning on your hoe, and squint toward the village. It's time to head to the market in Thebes. A short walk along the riverbank, to barter for supplies before the midday heat turns the world into a clay oven. You sling a woven basket over your shoulder, filled with a few onions and a small sack of barley from last season's harvest. It's not much, but it'll have to do. You joke to yourself that if the gods want better offerings, they should send you a surplus crop. Ra's probably too busy steering his sunboat to care about your grocery list. Though, you trudge along the path, reed brushing your legs, their whispers blending with the Nile's gentle lapping. The air smells of mud, fish, and the faint smoke of village ovens. A heron lifts off from the bank, wings glinting in the sun, and you wonder if it's a sign from Happy. Probably just hungry. Like you, Thebes comes into view. Its mud brick houses and sandstone temples sprawling under a sky so blue it hurts to look at. The market's already buzzing. A chaotic tangle of voices, smells, and colours that hits you like a wave. Stalls line the dusty square, shaded by palm frond awnings, piled with leeks, figs, fish, and clay pots. Donkeys bray, kids dart between legs, and a merchant's shouting about his finest linen, which looks suspiciously like your patched kilt. You weave through the crowd, dodging a stray goat that's eyeing your basket like it's a buffet. You mutter that if it tries anything, it's getting offered to Sobek. The goat scampers off, and you smirk, feeling briefly victorious. Mainstream fact: by 2500 BCE, Thebes was a thriving trade hub in Upper Egypt, its markets bustling with goods from the Nile Valley and beyond, where farmers, artisans, and merchants bartered everything from grain to gold. Money didn't exist yet, so you trade goods or services, a system that keeps scribes busy tallying debts. Here's a lesser-known detail. Market stalls often doubled as shrines, with small statues of Bes or Hathor tucked among the wares, blessed by priests to ensure fair deals. You spot one now, a clay Bes grinning beside a pile of onions, and you nod respectfully, hoping it keeps the merchant honest. You're not naive. Last week, a trader shorted you on flax, and you're still annoyed. You approach a stall stacked with dried fish, their silvery scales catching the light. The merchant, a wiry man with a crooked smile, seizes you up. You offer your onions, hoping for a decent trade. But he scoffs, saying your crop looks like it grew in a sandstorm. You fire back that his fish smell like they swam through a latrine. And he laughs, tossing you a couple anyway. Score one for you. You move on. Basket, lighter but not empty. Aiming for a weaver's stall to trade, barley for a scrap of linen to patch your kilt. The crowd's thick. A mix of farmers, potters, and priests in shaved heads and white robes, muttering prayers as they pass. A kid bumps your leg, nearly spilling your barley, and you glare, joking that he's training to be a pickpocket for Anubis. He grins and vanishes into the throng, leaving you to clutch your basket tighter. The market's a feast for the senses. Fresh bread's nutty aroma, the tang of garlic, with the clink of copper tools. But it's also a battlefield. Merchants haggle like they're defending a fortress, and you've got to be sharp or go home empty-handed. You reach the weaver's stall, her loom clicking rhythmically, and offer your barley. She inspects it, squinting like you've handed her dirt, but agrees to a small strip of linen. You're no scribe, but you know a fair deal when you see one. The sun's climbing, and the market's getting hotter, dust swirling underfoot as donkeys haul baskets of dates. You pause by a potter's stall, admiring a clay jar painted with lotus flowers, but it's way beyond your means. You joke to yourself that you'd need to trade your entire field for it. And maybe your kids. 2. The gods are here. 2. A small shrine to Hathor sits by a bread stall, adorned with a wilted flower. You bow, whispering for luck, because every deal's a prayer in disguise. Historians still argue whether Egyptian markets were freewheeling trade zones or tightly controlled by temples and nobles. You don't care about the politics. You just want to get home with enough to feed your family without owing a scribe your firstborn. A commotion erupts nearby. A donkey's knocked over a stall, scattering leaks across the dirt. The merchants yelling. The crowd's laughing. And you slip past. Grateful. It's not your problem. You've got your fish and linen. But you're still eyeing a stall with fresh figs. Their purple skins tempting you like a pharaoh's treasure. You hesitate. Your barley's nearly gone. And your spouse will skin you if you come back with nothing but fruit. You decide to save it for another day. Trudging toward the market's edge. The Nile's visible now. Its waters, a cool promise, beyond the chaos. You spot that fisherman from your village, hawking tilapia, and give him a pointed look about that borrowed basket. He pretends not to see you, and you roll your eyes, promising to settle it later. The market's noise fades as you head back along the riverbank. Basket heavier, but your heart lighter. You've survived the haggling, the dust, the donkeys, and you're feeling almost smug. The Nile hums. Reeds swaying like they're applauding your hustle. A falcon swoops low, and you pause, wondering if Horus is watching. You bow your head, just in case, joking that if he's got time to spy on you, he could help with the harvest. The sun's nearing its peak, and you're craving shade. Maybe a sip of water from the river, though you'll check for crocodiles first. You're not done yet. The fields are waiting, and the gods don't take lunch breaks. For now, you walk. The market's chaos behind you, the Nile's song in your ears, and a small victory in your basket. In Egypt, that's enough to keep you going. Section 7. Lunch under a sycamore. You're back from the market. Your basket now holding a couple of dried fish and a scrap of linen. The spoils of your haggling in Thebes' chaotic square. The Nile's soft hum follows you as you trudge along the riverbank. Reeds brushing your legs like old friends, whispering secrets. The sun's high now, turning the world into a shimmering furnace. And your kilt's soaked with sweat, clinging to your thighs like a second skin. Your feet ache from the dusty path. Each pebble a small betrayal to your calloused souls. You're dreaming of shade, a moment to sit, and something to quiet your stomach, which is growling louder than a crocodile with a toothache. You spot a sycamore tree ahead, its broad leaves casting a pool of cool shadow by the river. That's your sanctuary, your lunch spot. And you pick up your pace, joking to yourself that if Ra wants to keep roasting you, he'll have to chase you under the tree first. You collapse against the sycamore's gnarled trunk, the bark rough but comforting, like a friend who doesn't judge your dirt-streaked face. The shade's a blessing, cutting the sun's glare to a soft, dappled light that dances on the ground. The Nile's close, its waters lapping gently, carrying the faint scent of mud and fish. You set your basket down, careful not to crush the fish, and stretch out, your spine popping like a festival drum. A breeze stirs, cooling your skin, and you close your eyes for a moment, savoring the quiet. Well, quietish. A frog croaks nearby, and a flock of sparrows bickers in the branches above. You mutter that they're probably arguing over who gets to steal your lunch. Egypt's animals always seem to have an agenda, and you're not ruling out a sparrow heist. Lunch isn't a banquet. You pull out one of the dried fish from your basket, its scales flaking under your fingers, and a handful of dates you stashed from last week's trade. The fish is salty, cheve, with a faint river tang that's not exactly gourmet but fills the void. You nibble it slowly, picking out tiny bones, and follow it with a date. Its sticky sweetness, a small luxury in a world of gritty bread. You've got a clay flask of water, Dipped from the Nile this morning and left to settle, so it's not too muddy. It's lukewarm. Tastes faintly of earth. But it's safer than drinking straight from the river, where crocodiles and worse might lurk. Mainstream fact: ancient Egyptians relied heavily on the Nile for their diet, with fish, dates, and vegetables like onions, supplementing bread and beer, especially for commoners who rarely saw meat. Fish was so abundant, it was dried, traded, and even offered to gods. Here's a lesser-known detail. Egyptians sometimes used fish bones to make needles or combs, turning scraps into tools, with a practicality that'd make any scribe nod in approval. You've got a bone needle at home, traded for a basket of leeks, and it saved your kilt more than once. You lean back, chewing thoughtfully. The sycamore's shade, a cocoon against the world's heat, flies buzz around your fish, and you swat them lazily, joking that they're probably spies for Anubis, reporting your lunch break to the underworld. Hygiene's a losing battle here. Your hands are grimy. Your kilt's a map of dirt and sweat. And the flies don't care about your dignity. You're used to it. In Egypt, clean is a noble's privilege. And you're just glad the river's close enough to splash your face later. You glance at the Nile, where a fisherman's papyrus boat bobs, his net glinting in the sun. You squint, recognizing him as that basket borrower from your village. You'll corner him at the next festival, maybe guilt him into a fish or two. For now, you let it go. Too tired to hold a grudge under this tree. The gods are never far. Even at lunch, you notice a small pile of pebbles by the sycamore's roots, likely an offering to Hathor, whose sacred trees include these shady giants. You add a pebble, whispering thanks for the shade, because every act's a prayer in Egypt. Skip one, and you might find a snake in your basket. Historians still argue whether Egyptians saw every tree or river bend as divine, or if they just hedged their bets with offerings to avoid trouble. You don't care about the theology, you know what happens when the gods feel ignored. Last year, a neighbor skipped a festival for Hathor, and his goats stopped giving milk. Coincidence? You're not betting your dates on it. You bow your head, hoping Hathor's in a good mood today. A kid runs past, kicking up dust, chasing a stray dog that's yapping like it's auditioning for a temple choir. You shout for him to watch your basket, and he grins, darting off without a care. You shake your head, remembering when you were that wild, before fields and floods became your world. The village hums in the distance, women singing by the river, a potter's wheel whirring, a donkey braying like it's cursing the heat. Your neighbor's probably still in his field, cursing his barley, and you smile, thinking of your market jabs about his patchy crops. You'll trade him some fish later. Keep the peace. Village life's a balance, argue over goats, but share when it counts. The sun's starting to tilt, the shade shifting across your legs, and you know your break's nearly over. You finish the last date, licking the stickiness from your fingers, and tuck the fish bones into your basket. Maybe your spouse can use them for a needle. You're tempted to nap, the sycamore's lullaby and the Nile's hum pulling you towards sleep. But the fields are waiting, and the gods don't reward laziness. You joke to yourself that if Thoth gave you an extra hour, you'd spend it right here, dreaming of lotus flowers. Then you remember scorpions and decide work's safer. You stand, brushing dirt from your kilt, and grab your basket, the fishy smell lingering like a stubborn guest. The Nile sparkles, reeds swaying, and you feel a quiet strength from your simple meal. You're not a pharaoh, but you're alive, fed, and ready to face the afternoon's toil. For now, you head back to the field, the sycamore's shade, a fading promise, the god's eyes on your back, and the river's song in your heart. Section 8. Crafting for the Pharaoh. You leave the sycamore's shade behind. The Nile's gentle hum fading as you trudge back toward the village. Your basket lighter, but still smelling of dried fish. The sun's past its peak, but the heat clings like a stubborn guest, baking the earth under your calloused feet. Your kilt's a patchwork of sweat and silt, and your hands are raw from the morning's hoeing. Lunch gave you a flicker of strength, but now it's time to shift gears. Today, you're not just a farmer, you've been called to a work site near Thebes, where artisans and laborers are crafting for the pharaoh's eternal glory. It's not your usual field work, but refusing isn't an option. The pharaoh's word is divine, and his project's temples, tombs, statues are Egypt's heartbeat. You sling your basket over your shoulder, grab a worn chisel from your hut, and head toward the limestone quarry, joking to yourself that if Ra wants you to carve stone, he could at least send a cloud to cool you off. The path winds past the Nile, its reeds swaying like they're cheering you on, though you suspect they're just mocking your sore back. The air smells of dust and river water, with a faint tang of burning pitch from the work site ahead. You pass a group of women carrying water jars, their laughter mingling with the croak of frogs. A kid darts by, waving a stick like he's battling a hippo, and you shout for him to watch your path. He grins, unbothered, and you shake your head, envying his energy. The quarry's hum grows louder, chisels clinking, men shouting, the groan of wooden sledges hauling stone. You arrive to a swarm of activity masons, chip at limestone blocks. Carpenters shape beams, and overseers bark orders. Their reed whips more for show than punishment. You're assigned to a team carving blocks for a temple to Amun, the god king of Thebes. The stone's pale, almost glowing, and you feel a twinge of awe, knowing it'll stand for centuries. Mainstream fact, by 2500 BCE. Ancient Egyptians were master builders, using limestone, granite, and sandstone to construct temples and tombs, like the pyramids at Giza, with precision that still baffles modern engineers. Millions of blocks, some weighing tons, were quarried, shaped, and hauled without iron tools or wheels. Here's a lesser-known detail. Workers often left graffiti on stone blocks, scratching their names or jokes into hidden surfaces. A quiet rebellion against the pharaoh's eternity. You've seen a few crude drawings of fish or a scribbled, "Ka was here." You're tempted to carve your own name, but the overseer's watching, and you'd rather not test his whip. You kneel by a block, your chisel biting into the stone, sending chips flying like tiny stars. The work's brutal, your hands cramp, your shoulders burn, and the dust coats your throat like a second skin. You fall into a rhythm, chisel striking hammer, the clink echoing like a temple bell. Your team's a mix of farmers like you, pulled from fields, and skilled masons who know stone like you know barley. One, a wiry man named Ta, jokes that your chiseling looks like a hippo dancing. You fire back that his beard's so patchy it could be a moth-eaten kilt. And he laughs, tossing you a sip from his water flask. The camaraderie keeps you going, though you're all sweating buckets under a moon's gaze. Or maybe it's just the sun. You glance at a half-carved relief nearby. A pharaoh smiting enemies, his face serene. You wonder if he ever lifted a chisel himself. Probably not. Pharaohs don't sweat. They shine. You joke to yourself that if you were pharaoh, you'd decree a day off for every block carved. Ra's probably too busy to grant that wish. Though, the gods are everywhere here. Not just in the temple you're building. A small shrine to Ptah, god of craftsmen, sits by the quarry's edge, adorned with a chipped clay figure and a wilted lotus. You pause to bow, muttering thanks for steady hands, because a slipped chisel could mean a crushed finger or worse. Religions, your shadow, skip a prayer, and you might bring bad luck to the whole team. Historians still argue whether workers on Pharaoh's projects were slaves or willing laborers paid in grain and beer. You don't feel like a slave, but you're not exactly volunteering either. You're here because the village headman said so, and saying no means risking your family's rations. You're paid in bread and onions, enough to keep your kids fed. So you keep carving, one chip at a time. Dust swirls as a sledge hauls a finished block toward the river, where boats will carry it to the temple site. You watch, marveling at the ropes and rollers that move mountains with nothing but muscle and grit. A mason nearby curses as his chisel slips, and you wince, grateful your block's still smooth. The overseer shouts for faster work, and you grit your teeth, hammering harder. Your hands are numb now, but you're proud of the clean edges you've shaped. This stone might hold Amun's name forever, and that's a kind of immortality. Even if no one knows your name, you spot that fisherman from your village, delivering water to the site, and give him a pointed look about that borrowed basket. He ducks his head, and you smirk, planning to settle it over a beer. The sun's dipping, casting long shadows across the quarry, and you're counting down to the end of your shift. You're tempted to collapse right here, but the fields still need you tomorrow, and your spouse will want that linen patched. You joke to yourself that if Thoth gave you an extra arm, you'd use it to fan yourself. The Nile's hum drifts from the river, a soothing counterpoint to the quarry's clamour. A falcon swoops overhead, and you pause, wondering if Horus is watching. You bow, just in case, whispering for strength. The gods, the stone, the river, they're all part of this endless dance. You strike the chisel again. The clink, a small prayer. Your hands shaping eternity for a pharaoh you'll never meet. For now, you're alive, carving under the god's gaze, the Nile's song in your ears, and a quiet hope that tonight's dinner won't be just onions. Section 9. Midday Heat and Siesta. You set down your chisel, the limestone block, now a little closer to its final shape. Its edges smoothed by your aching hands, the quarry's clatter chisels striking. Men shouting, sledges groaning fades as the overseer calls a break. The sun's a blazing disk at its zenith, turning the air into a shimmering haze that makes the Nile's distant glint look like a mirage. Your kilt soaked with sweat, dust caked into every crease, and your throat's so dry it feels like you've swallowed a handful of sand. You're bone-tired, shoulders throbbing from hours of carving for the pharaoh's temple. But the promise of a siesta pulls you forward. You grab your basket, still faintly fishy from the market hall, and trudge toward a cluster of sycamore trees by the riverbank, their broad leaves offering a patch of shade like a gift from Hathor herself. You joke to yourself that if Ra's trying to melt you, he'll have to wait until after your nap. You collapse under a sycamore, the cool earth, a balm against your calloused feet. The tree's gnarled roots cradle you like an old friend, and you lean back, letting out a sigh that could wake a mummy. The Nile's soft hum weaves through the air, mingling with the rustle of reeds and the lazy buzz of flies you're too tired to swat. A breeze stirs, cooling your sweat-slickered skin, and you close your eyes, savouring the moment. The shade's a sanctuary, cutting the sun's glare to a soft, dappled glow that dances across your eyelids. You're not alone. Other workers sprawl nearby, some chewing leftover bread, others already snoring, like they're auditioning for a hippo chorus. You smile, joking to yourself that if Thoth's keeping a ledger of laziness, this siesta's earning you a gold star. You rummage in your basket, pulling out a couple of dates left from lunch. They're sticky, half crushed, but their sweetness is a small victory against the day's grind. You nibble slowly, spitting the pits into the dirt, hoping they don't sprout into a tree that'll block your shade. You've got no water, left your flasks dry, and the Nile's tempting but too risky with crocodiles lurking. You'll refill later. Maybe barter a sip from Tar, the mason who teased your chiseling. For now, you're content to rest. The sycamore's leaves whispering like they're telling secrets about the gods. Mainstream fact: ancient Egyptians structured their workday around the heat, taking midday breaks to escape the sun's peak. A practice that preserved energy for labor-intensive tasks like farming or building. Temples and tombs were built in shifts, with workers resting to avoid heat stroke. Here's a lesser-known detail during siestas. Workers sometimes played Senet, a board game with wooden pieces and dice, believed to mimic the soul's journey through the underworld. You've seen Ptah scratch a Senet grid in the dirt, betting onions on a throw. You're too tired to play, but you wouldn't mind winning a leak or two. You stretch out, your spine cracking like a festival firecracker, and let your mind drift. The Nile's hum is a lullaby, pulling you towards sleep, but you're still half aware of the world around you. A frog croaks nearby, and you wonder if it's mocking your dusty kilt. A kid's laughter echoes from the village, probably that stick-waving rascal from earlier, chasing dogs or dreams. The quarry's noise is a distant murmur now, replaced by the river's song and the soft chirp of sparrows in the branches. You think of your family, your spouse patching that linen you traded for, your kids playing with their clay hippo toy. You're working for them, not just the pharaoh, and that thought keeps the exhaustion at bay. You joke to yourself that if Anubis shows up now, you'll bribe him with a date pit to let you nap in peace. The gods are close. Even in this quiet moment, you notice a small pile of pebbles by the sycamore's roots, an offering to Hathor, whose sacred trees offer shade like a divine embrace. You add a pebble, whispering, "Thanks for the rest," because every pause feels like a gift in Egypt's relentless cycle. Religion's your heartbeat, skip a prayer, and you might wake to a scorpion in your basket, or a flood that drowns your barley. Historians still argue whether Egyptians saw every tree or breeze as sacred, or if offerings were just habit to avoid bad luck. You don't care about the debate, you know what happens when the gods are ignored. Last season, a neighbor skipped an offering to Sobek, and his boat capsized. You're not risking it. Not when your family's counting on you. Your eyelids grow heavy, the Nile's hum blending with the sycamore's rustle into a soothing drone. You're tempted to sleep, but you keep one eye half open, the wary of snakes or that basket-stealing fisherman who's probably skulking nearby. You spot him by the river, hauling a net, and give him a mental note to settle that score at the market. For now, you let it go. Too comfortable to care. The shade's perfect. The dates are gone, and your body's begging for rest. You think of lotus flowers, their petals floating on the Nile. A dream you had last week that felt like a sign from Isis. Maybe. You're not sure, but it left you hopeful. You're not a priest, just a worker with a chisel and a prayer. But Egypt's magic makes anything feel possible. The siesta's not forever. The overseer's whistle will drag you back to the quarry soon enough. For now, though, you're here. The Nile's pulse, a steady rhythm. The sycamore's shade, a gentle hug. The gods, a quiet presence watching over. You joke to yourself, if a Ra gave you an extra hour, you'd spend it right here, dreaming of a cooler day or a softer mat. Then you're off, drifting towards sleep. The Nile's lullaby pulling you under. Your battered hands, still. Your heart at ease. The world's waiting fields. Stone. Gods. But you've earned this moment. A fleeting piece in Egypt's endless dance. The siesta's a fragile gift, and you sink deeper into it, your body melting against the sycamore's roots, as the Nile's gentle hum weaves a spell of calm. The air's thick with the scent of sun-warmed mud and reeds, and the shade feels like a soft blanket draped over your shoulders, your hands, still tingling from the chisel's grip, rest, limp, in your lap. The blisters, a quiet reminder of the quarry's demands. The flies are relentless, buzzing around your empty basket. But you're too drowsy to care. You mutter to yourself that they're probably reporting to Anubis, tattling on your laziness. Let them right now. The world's just you, the tree, and the river's endless song. You shift slightly, the earth cool beneath you, and let your thoughts drift like a papyrus boat on the Nile's current. You're not alone in this midday pause. Nearby, a mason's snoring softly, his head pillowed on his arm, a half-eaten onion by his side. Another worker's scratching a Senate grid in the dirt, tossing pebbles as dice. His friend betting a fig on the outcome. You watch through half-closed eyes, tempted to join, but your body's too heavy, your mind too foggy. The game's a small rebellion against the day's grind, a way to steal a moment for joy under the gods' watchful gaze. You think of your kids, how they'd love to play, scattering pebbles and giggling like the sparrows above. You'll teach them Senate one day, maybe carve a board from driftwood if you can spare the time. For now, you're content to rest. The sycamore's shade, a shield against Ra's fiery stare. The Nile's close, its waters glinting like a promise of relief. But you're not foolish enough to wade in. Crocodile don't respect lunch breaks, and you've heard too many stories of men vanishing mid-swim. You glance at the riverbank, where that fisherman's still hauling nets, his boat wobbling like it's one wave from disaster. You're still annoyed about that borrowed basket. But the siesta's too peaceful to hold a grudge. You'll settle it at the market. Maybe guilt him into a tilapia or two. For now, you let the thought drift away, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the distant chant of a priest from a temple across the river. The sound's faint, a reminder that the gods never sleep. Even if you're tempted to, you think of Hathor again, her presence lingering in the sycamore's shade. You've heard priests say she dances in the leaves, bringing joy to weary hearts. You're not sure you feel joy, but this rest is close enough. You add another pebble to the offering pile, a habit more than a prayer, and whisper, thanks for the tree's mercy. In Egypt, every moment's a chance to honor the divine plowing fields, eating dates, even napping. You've seen what happens when the gods are ignored. A neighbor's field, blighted after he mocked Isis. A boat lost to a storm after skipping Sobek's festival. You're not a priest, but you're careful, because the gods' wrath is as real as the Nile's floods. You joke to yourself that if Hathor wants more than pebbles, she can take your blisters instead. The siesta's winding down. You feel it in the air. The subtle shift as workers stir, stretching and grumbling. The overseer's whistle hasn't sounded yet, but it's coming, ready to drag you back to the quarry's dust and clamour. You're not ready. Not really. But you've got no choice. The pharaoh's temple won't carve itself, and your family needs the rations you earn. You think of your spouse, probably needing dough back home, and your kids, chasing that cat who acts like Bastet's personal envoy. They're why you keep going. Why you'll pick up that chisel again despite the ache in your bones. You smile, imagining their laughter when you tell them about Ptah's moth-eaten beard. Small moments like that are your real treasure, worth more than any pharaoh's gold. You sit up slowly, brushing dirt from your kilt, the sycamore's shade still clinging to you like a reluctant farewell. The flies are bolder now, circling your basket, and you swat them, muttering that they'd better not follow you to the quarry. The mason's awake, yawning and rubbing his eyes, while the Senate players are packing up, one grumbling about his lost fig. You stretch, your spine cracking like a dry reed, and grab your basket. The fishy smell, a faint echo of the market's chaos. The Nile's hum is louder now. Or maybe you're just more awake. Its rhythm, a steady pulse, under the day's heat. A falcon wheels overhead. And you pause, wondering if Horus is checking your work ethic. You bow your head, just in case, joking that if he's got time to spy, he could carry your chisel for you. The village hums in the distance, women singing by the river, a donkey braying like it's cursing the gods. The faint clink of a potter's wheel. You think of your field, waiting for your hoe, and the barley you'll plant when this quarry work's done. Life's a juggle fields. Pharaoh, family, gods, and you're always one misstep from dropping it all. You're not building pyramids or sailing to Punt, but you're carving a life, one dusty day at a time. The siesta's given you just enough strength to keep going. A fleeting piece in Egypt's relentless cycle. You stand, slinging your basket over your shoulder, and head back toward the quarry. The sycamore's shade, a memory. The Nile's song in your ears, and a quiet hope that the gods are too busy to notice your stolen nap. Section 10. River life and fishing. You leave the sycamore's shade behind, the quarry's dust still clinging to your kilt as you trudge back toward the Nile. Your basket slung over your shoulder. The sun's dipping slightly, but the air's still thick with heat. A heavy blanket that makes every step feel like wading through mud. The overseer's whistle hasn't called you back to the chisel yet, and you've been given a rare afternoon task, helping with the village's fishing haul. The Nile's your lifeline, not just for crops, but for the fish that keep your family fed when barley's scarce. You head to the riverbank, where papyrus boats bob like floating nests, their reeds creaking softly. The water's a shimmering mirror, reflecting a sky so blue it feels like Isis herself painted it. You joke to yourself that if Ra's going to bake you all day, he could at least spare a breeze to cool your blistered hands. You reach the bank, the scent of wet mud and fish hitting you like a wave. Reeds sway, whispering secrets, and a heron stands nearby, eyeing the water like it's plotting a heist. You spot your neighbor, the fisherman who borrowed your basket, balancing on a papyrus boat, his net glistening with river water. You give him a pointed look, but he's too busy hauling tilapia to notice. You'll settle that score later, maybe over a beer at the market. For now, you're here to help, not haggle. You step onto a boat, its reeds bending under your weight, and grab a net. The coarse fibers, rough against your calloused palms. The boat wobbles, and you steady yourself, muttering a prayer to Sobek, the crocodile god, to keep his kin far away. You're not keen on becoming lunch. The Nile's alive, teeming with fish, frogs, and dangers you'd rather not think about. You cast your net, the motion practiced but clumsy compared to the fisherman's fluid throw. The net spreads like a spider's web, sinking into the water with a soft splash. You wait, the boat rocking gently, the river's hum, a soothing counterpoint to the village's distant buzzwomen singing, kids shouting, a donkey braying like it's cursing the gods. Mainstream fact by 2500 BCE. The Nile was a vital source of protein for Egyptians, with fishing providing a key food supply alongside agriculture. Fish like tilapia and catfish were dried, salted, or eaten fresh, sustaining millions. Here's a lesser-known detail: fishermen sometimes used trained cormorants, birds tethered to boats, to dive and catch fish, spitting them out for their masters. You've seen it once, a bird plunging like a feathered spear, emerging with a wriggling prize. You're sticking to nets. Though, birds seem like more trouble than they're worth. You pull the net, muscles straining as it resists, heavy with water, and, hopefully, fish. It breaks the surface, silver scales flashing, and you grin 3 tilapia, fat enough to feed your family tonight. You toss them into a clay pot, their tails slapping the sides, and cast again. The boat swaying under your shift. The fisherman nods approval, shouting that your throw's better than last time, though it still looks like a drunk ibis flapping. You fire back that his boat's so rickety it'd sink under a frog's weight. And he laughs, tossing you a sip from his water flask. The banter's light, but you're both scanning the water, wary of ripples that might mean a hippo or worse. You've heard stories of boats flipped by angry beasts, fishermen lost to Sobek's jaws. You mutter another prayer, just in case. The gods are close here, their presence rippling through the Nile, like the fish in your net. A small shrine to Happy, god of the river, sits on the bank, its clay figure adorned with a wilted reed. You toss a pebble toward it. A quick thanks for the catch, because every fish feels like a gift. In Egypt, every act's a prayer, casting nets, ploughing fields, even bickering over baskets. Historians still argue whether fishermen revered the Nile as a deity or just respected its power to give and take life. You don't care about the debate, you know what happens when Happy's ignored. Last year, a fisherman skipped an offering, and his nets came up empty for weeks. You're not risking it. Not when your kids are counting on tonight's fish. The sun's lower now, painting the river gold, and the air's cooling. A mercy after the midday furnace. Your arms ache, but the pot's filling 5 tilapia now. In enough for a stew with onions if your spouse is feeling generous. A falcon swoops low, its wings slicing the sky. And you pause, wondering if Horus is watching. You bow your head, whispering for protection, joking to yourself that if he's got time to spy, he could scare off the hippos for you. The fisherman's hauling another net, his boat steady, despite your earlier jab. You work in rhythm, casting, pulling, sorting. The Nile's pulse matching your own. A frog leaps from a reed, splashing nearby, and you smile, thinking of your kids chasing frogs by the bank. You'll bring them a fishtail to play with. A small treat after a long day. The village hums in the distance, a potter's wheel whirring. Women laughing by the river. To a kid's shout, echoing like a memory of your own childhood. You think of your field, waiting for your hoe, and the quarry, where your chisels left its mark on eternity. Fishing's just another thread in Egypt's tapestry. A dance of survival under the gods' gaze. You're not a noble or a scribe, but you're feeding your family. One net at a time. The fisherman calls it a day. His pot brimming, and you help drag the boat ashore. Reeds crunching underfoot. You're tired, but the catch is good, and you feel a quiet pride. You sling your basket, now fish-scented, over your shoulder and head home. The Nile's song in your ears, Sobek's shadow at your back, and a hope that tonight's dinner won't end with a bone stuck in your throat. Section 11. Temples and priests. You're trudging back from the river, your basket heavy with tilapia, their scales catching the late afternoon light as the Nile's hum fades behind you. Your kilt's damp from the boat's sway, and your arms ache from hauling nets. But the catch is good enough for a stew to make your kids' eyes light up. The sun's lower now, painting the sky in hues of gold and lotus pink. A soft breeze cooling the sweat on your brow. You're heading home, But the path takes you past the Grand Temple of Amun in Thebes, its sandstone walls glowing like they're lit from within. The temple's a world apart from your mud-brick hut, a towering hymn to the gods carved in stone. And you slow your pace, feeling small under its shadow. You joke to yourself that if Ra's got time to gild the temple, he could toss a few rays your way to dry your kilt. The temple's alive with activity. Even at this hour, priests in white linen robes glide through the outer courtyard, their shaved heads gleaming like polished copper. They carry incense burners, trails of myrrh smoke curling upward. The scent, sharp and sweet against the dusty air. A low chant drifts out, a rhythmic prayer to Amun, the god-king who rules Thebes, and, some say, the world. You pause by the massive pylon gate, its reliefs showing Pharaoh smiting enemies, his chariot wheels crushing bones. You've helped carve stone for this place? Your chisels mark somewhere in its walls, but you're not allowed inside the inner sanctum. That's for priests, nobles, and pharaoh commoners like you stay out here, offering prayers and awe. You bow your head, muttering thanks to Amun for the fish, because every moment's a chance to honor the gods. Mainstream fact: by 2500 BCE, temples like Amun's in Thebes were central to Egyptian life, serving as religious, economic, and political hubs where priests conducted rituals, managed vast lands, and collected taxes in grain and goods. They were the heart of the pharaoh's divine order, linking gods to mortals. Here's a lesser-known detail. Priests were often part-time, with farmers or artisans like you serving temporary temple duties, shaving their heads and purifying themselves to assist in rituals. You've never been called for it. Your village has enough volunteers, but you've seen neighbors return from temple service, smug about their holy status, though they still smell like onions. You're fine sticking to fields and nets. Chanting sounds like work, and you'd probably trip over a censer. You linger by the gate, watching a priest sprinkle water from a bronze bowl, purifying the ground for a ritual. His robe so clean, it makes your kilt look like a dust rag. And you wonder how he stays spotless in this heat. Probably divine favor, or a servant scrubbing his laundry. You smirk, joking to yourself that if Amun granted you a priest's robe, you'd use it to patch your roof. The chant grows louder, joined by the soft jingle of sistrums, rattle-like instruments sacred to Hathor. A crowd's gathering: villagers, traders, kids clutching their mothers' hands, drawn by the promise of a festival or free bread from the temple's stores. You're tempted to join, but your fish won't stay fresh forever, and your spouse will have words if you dawdle. The gods are closer here, their presence heavy in the temple's shadow. You notice a small shrine to Sekhmet, the lioness goddess of war and healing. Tucked by the gate, someone's left a clay amulet, shaped like a heart. And you add a pebble, whispering for your kid's health. Religion's your pulse in Egypt. Skip a prayer, and you might bring a plague or a lion's wrath. Historians still argue whether priests held more power than pharaohs, controlling wealth and swaying kings with divine omens. You don't care about power games. You know what happens when the gods are ignored. Last year, a village skipped Sekhmet's festival, and a fever swept through, taking 3 kids. You're not risking it. Not when your family's all you've got. A priest's gaza flicks your way, his eyes sharp, like he's reading your soul for Anubis. You bow lower, clutching your basket, hoping he doesn't notice your fishy smell. He moves on, and you exhale, relieved. Priests are half holy, half human, and you've heard stories of them demanding offerings from villagers too poor to give. You spot that fisherman from your village, delivering reeds to the temple, and give him a hard stare about that borrowed basket. He ducks behind a palm frond, and you roll your eyes, promising to settle it at the market. For now, you focus on the temple, its walls etched with hieroglyphs. You can't read but feel in your bones stories of gods, kings, and eternity. The crowd's growing, kids tugging at skirts, a woman muttering prayers for a sick goat. You feel the temple's pull, its promise of divine favor. But you're too practical to linger. Your fish need cooking, your fields need hoeing, and the gods don't pay your debts. You think of your hut, your spouse's tired smile, your kids chasing that cat who thinks it's Baste reborn. They're your real temple, worth more than any sandstone pylon. You joke to yourself that if Thoth gave you a priest's wisdom, you'd use it to outsmart that fisherman and get your basket back. The chant rises, myrrh smoke curling like a ladder to the sky. And you turn away. The temples glow at your back. You head home, the path familiar under your feet. Reeds swaying like they're waving you on. The Nile's a silver thread now, reflecting the fading sun, and a heron lifts off, wings slicing the air. You wonder if it's Horus, watching, and bow your head. Just in case, the village hums ahead, potter's wheels whirring, women laughing by the river, a donkey braying like it's cursing the stars. You're not a priest or a pharaoh, just a man with a basket of fish and a prayer for tomorrow. The temple's behind you, but the gods are everywhere in the river. The reeds, the dust under your feet. You keep walking, the Nile's song in your ears, Amun's shadow at your side, and a quiet hope that tonight's stew won't have too many bones. Section 12. Family life at dusk. You're walking home from the temple's shadow. The Nile's silver glint fading as the sun dips low, painting the sky in soft hues of amber and lotus blue. Your basket swings at your side, the tilapia inside a promise of tonight's stew, though their fishy smell clings to your hands like a stubborn guest. Your kilt stiff with quarry dust and river damp, and your feet ache from a day of nets, chisels, and dusty paths. The air's cooling now. A gentle breeze, carrying the scent of reeds and baking bread from the village ahead. You're tired, bone deep, but the thought of your mud brick hut, your family waiting inside, lifts your steps. You joke to yourself that if Ra's done roasting you for the day, he could light your path home with a few extra rays. No such luck. But the twilight's soft enough to guide you. The village comes into view, a cluster of low huts hugged by the Nile's curve, their palm frond roofs glowing faintly under the last of the sun. You hear it before you see it, kids laughing, a goat bleeding, the rhythmic slap of laundry against river rocks, your neighbour's arguing with his donkey again, his voice carrying like a temple chant. You smile, shaking your head, and mutter that the donkey's probably winning. You pass a sycamore, its leaves whispering in the breeze, and nod to a small shrine for Bees, the dwarf god guarding homes. You don't have an offering, but you touch the clay figure's base, whispering, "Thanks for keeping your kids safe while you were gone." In Egypt, every step's a prayer, and you're not about to skip one now. You duck into your hut. The cool darkness, a relief after the day's heat. The air smells of lentils and smoke, with a faint tang of straw from the reed mats. Your spouse is stirring a clay pot over the oven, the steam rising like an offering to Hathor. Your kids are sprawled on the floor, the youngest chasing a clay hippo toy, while the older one pokes at the cat, who's lounging like Bastet's royal cousin. You drop your basket by the door, the fish sloshing in their pot, and collapse onto a stool, your spine creaking like an old papyrus boat. Your spouse glances over, raising an eyebrow at your dusty kilt, and you grin, joking that you've brought home enough fish to make you smell like Sobek's priest. They roll their eyes but smile, and the warmth in that look is worth more than any market trade. Mainstream fact by 2500 BCE. Family life was the backbone of Egyptian society, with households centered around shared labor, meals, and rituals, where men, women, and children worked together to survive the Nile's cycles. Homes were simple, mud brick shelters, but they were sanctuaries of love and duty. Here's a lesser-known detail. Egyptian parents often made clay or wooden toys for their kids, like spinning tops or animal figures, to teach them about the world. Hippos for the river, falcons for Horus. Your youngest clutches that hippo toy like it's a treasure, and you carved it yourself last season, trading a basket of onions for the clay. It's chipped now, but it still makes them laugh. And that's enough. You hand over the fish, and your spouse sets to work, scaling them with a flint knife, the scraps saved for the cat, who's suddenly very attentive. You scoop up your youngest, tossing them in the air until they squeal, their laughter filling the hut like a festival song. Your older kid tugs at your kilt, asking about the temple, and you spin a tale about priests with magic sistrums and walls that glow like Ra's sunboat. It's half true, but their wide eyes make the exaggeration worth it. You think of the day fields, to nets, quarry, temple, and realize these moments, small and fleeting, are why you keep going. You joke to yourself that if Thoth gave you a scribe's skill, you'd write a hymn to your kids' giggles instead of Pharaoh's deeds. The gods are here, too. In your hut's quiet corners, a small shrine to Bees sits by the oven, its clay figure grinning fiercely to scare off evil spirits. Your spouse left a date pit there this morning, and you add a fish scale, whispering for protection. Religions woven into family life, skip a prayer, and you might invite a demon or a fever. Historians still argue whether Egyptians truly feared every spirit, or if household rituals were just tradition to bind families. You don't care about the debate. You know what happens when Bees is ignored. Last year, a neighbor's child fell ill after they forgot an offering, and the village whispered of angry spirits. You're not risking it. Not when your kid's health is all that matters. Dinner's almost ready. The lentil stew bubbling, its earthy scent mingling with the fish's tang. You sit cross-legged on the mat, your kids crowding close, the cat weaving between you like it's claiming the meal. Your spouse serves the stew in clay bowls, the fish flaky and warm, a rare treat after days of bread and onions. You eat slowly, savoring each bite. Though you pick out a bone before it chokes you, the cat gets a scrap, purring like it's praising basted. And you laugh, warning your kids not to let it rule the hut. Outside, the village settles, stars peek through the twilight. Edo barks. The Nile's hum, a steady lullaby. You spot that fisherman's boat tied up nearby, and you narrow your eyes, still plotting to reclaim that basket. Maybe tomorrow, over a market trade, the day's weight lifts as you eat. For your family's chatter, a balm for your aching bones. You think of the temple's grandeur, the quarry's dust, the river's dangers. But here, in this hut, you're rich in what matters. You're not a priest or a pharaoh, just a man with a family, a fish stew, and a prayer for tomorrow. You joke to yourself that if Anubis comes tonight, you'll offer him the cat's leftovers to leave you be. The kids yawn, their eyes heavy, and you know bedtime's near. You'll tell them a story, maybe about Horus's falcon wings, then sleep on the mat. The Nile's song in your dreams, best guarding your door, and a quiet hope that dawn won't bring a scorpion or a flood. Section 13. Medicine and Magic. You're sitting on the reed mat in your mud brick hut, the last of the fish stew settling warmly in your stomach as dusk deepens outside. The Nile's gentle hum drifts through the open doorway, mingling with the soft crackle of the clay oven's dying embers. Your kids are curled up nearby, their clay hippo toy abandoned as they drift towards sleep, their breaths soft like a breeze through reeds. The cat, full of fish scraps, lounges by the BE's shrine, its eyes glinting like it's guarding the household's dreams. Your spouse is tidying the bowls, humming a tune you've heard at Hathor's festivals, and you feel a rare moment of peace. But your hand stings a small cut from the quarry's chisel, red and tender, throbs under the dust caked on your skin. It's not deep, but in Egypt, even a scratch can turn ugly fast. You reach for a clay jar of honey, hoping to soothe it before it invites trouble. You joke to yourself that if Anubis is sniffing around, he'll have to wait. You're not ready for the underworld over a lousy cut. You dab the honey on the wound, its sticky sweetness cool against the heat of your skin. The air smells of lentils and straw, now tinged with the honey's faint floral scent. Your spouse glances over, nodding approval, and hands you a strip of linen from your market trade to wrap the cut. Medicine here isn't a scribe's scroll or a priest's chant. It's practical, passed down through families like a well-worn hoe. Honey's your first defense. It soothes and keeps evil spirits at bay. Or so your mother swore. You're not sure about spirits, but you've seen cuts fester without it, turning men feverish until Sekhmet's healing or Anubis's judgment claims them. You tie the linen snug, muttering a prayer to Isis, goddess of healing, for good measure. In Egypt, medicine and magic are twins, and you're not about to skip either. Mainstream fact by 2500 BCE. Ancient Egyptians were pioneers in medicine, using natural remedies like honey, herbs, and bandages, alongside surgical tools to treat wounds, fractures, and infections. As documented in later papyri, like the Ebers papyrus, they set bones, stitched cuts, and even drilled skulls to relieve head injuries. Here's a lesser-known detail. Egyptians often wore amulets inscribed with spells to ward off disease, believing evil spirits caused illness as much as dirt or injury. You've got a small faience scarab tied around your neck, a gift from your spouse, etched with a spell for health. It's chipped, but you touch it now, hoping it's still got some magic left. You're not a priest, but you've seen fevers break after a charm's whispered. And you're not betting against Isis's power. You lean back, the mat creaking under you, and wince as the cut stings. Your spouse suggests a paste of garlic and aloe if the honey fails, but you'd rather not smell like a market stall gone bad. You laugh, joking that if Sekhmet smells garlic, she might heal you just to escape the stench. They smirk, tossing you a date to chew instead of complaining. You nibble it, the sweetness grounding you, and think of the village healer, an old woman with eyes like Thoth's ibis. She's not a priest, but her hut's full of jars myrrh, willow bark, frankincense, and she mutters spells over every poultice. Last year, she saved your neighbor's son from a snakebite with a mix of herbs and chants. You're grateful, but her fees, barley, or fish aren't cheap. And you're hoping honey does the trick tonight. The gods are woven into healing, their names invoked with every remedy. You glance at the BE's shrine, its clay figure fierce against spirits that might sneak through the dark. Your spouse left a fish scale there earlier, and you add a date pit, whispering for protection. Religion's your shield, skip a prayer, and you might invite a demon or a fever. Historians still argue whether Egyptians trusted magic more than medicine or if both were one and the same. You don't care about the debate. You know what happens when the gods are ignored. A neighbor once scoffed at Isis's charms, and his leg wound turned black, claiming him before the next flood. You're not risking it. Not when your kids need you to haul nets tomorrow. Outside, the village quiet stars speckle the sky. A dog barks. The Nile's hum, a steady lullaby. You think of that fisherman, probably asleep by now. His borrowed basket, still on your mind? You'll corner him at the market. Maybe trade a fish for it and call it even. For now, you focus on the cut. The honey's stickiness, a small comfort. You've heard priests at Amun's temple use spells to banish illness. Their incense thick enough to choke a hippo. You can't afford their rituals. But Isis feels close in your hut. Her magic in the honey. The linen. The scarab at your neck. You're not a healer. Just a man with a chisel and a prayer. But Egypt's taught you to trust the old ways. Your kids stir. The youngest mumbling in their sleep. And you smile, brushing a strand of hair from their face. Your spouse sit beside you, their hand resting on yours, and you feel the day's weight lift. If only a little. The cut's still tender, but the honey's working. Or maybe it's Isis answering your whisper. You think of the quarry, the nets, the temple's glow. But here, in this hut, you're whole. You joke to yourself that if Thoth gave you a healer's skill, you'd use it to fix your back before your hand. The cat yawns, stretching like it's blessing the night. And you laugh softly, warning it not to steal your honey jar. You settle back, the mat cool beneath you, the Nile's song in your ears, discarding your dreams, and a quiet hope that tomorrow's dawn won't bring a fever or a flood. Section 14. Scribes and their secrets. You wake to the faint hum of the Nile. The honey-soaked bandage on your hand, a sticky reminder of last night's worries. The cut's less angry now, thanks to Isis, or maybe just the honey. And you're grateful as you roll off the reed mat, careful not to wake your kids, still curled up like lotus buds. The hut's dark, lit only by dawn's soft glow sneaking through the palm frond roof. And the air smells of straw and yesterday's lentils. Your spouse is already up, poking the clay oven to life, while the cat, ever the king of the house, watches from a stool. You pull on your kilt, stiff with quarry dust and fish scales, and step outside. The cool morning, a brief mercy before Ra's heat takes over. Today, you're not headed to the fields or the river. You've been summoned to a scribe's office near Thebes to deliver barley from your harvest as tax. You grab a sack of grain, hefting it over your shoulder, and joke to yourself that if Thoth's watching, he'd better not let you spill this on the way. The path to Thebes winds along the Nile, reeds whispering as you pass, their tips brushing your legs, like they're sharing village gossip. The river's a silver thread under the rising sun, and a heron lifts off, wings slicing the air. You wonder if it's Horus, keeping an eye on your taxes, and bow your head, just in case. Thebes comes into view, its temples and markets stirring awake, the air thick with dust and the faint tang of myrrh from a priest's censer. You reach the scribe's office, a mud brick building dwarfed by Amun's temple, its walls etched with faded hieroglyphs. Inside, the scribe sits cross-legged on a mat, surrounded by papyrus scrolls and clay tablets, his reed pen scratching like a beetle on wood. He's young, his linen tunic cleaner than your kilt will ever be, and his shaved head gleams like he's polished it for the gods. You set the barley sack down, bowing low, and he barely glances up, muttering about Kotas. You joke to yourself that if you had his job, you'd write a scroll about that fisherman who borrowed your basket. Mainstream fact, by 2500 BCE. Scribes were the backbone of Egyptian bureaucracy, recording taxes, laws, and temple offerings with hieroglyphs and hieratic script, enabling the pharaoh's complex administration. Trained from childhood, they were among the few who could read and write, wielding power through knowledge. Here's a lesser-known detail: scribes sometimes hid personal notes in their records, like complaints about late payments or doodles of cats, tucked into margins where only another scribe might notice. You've heard rumors of a scroll in Thebes that lists a scribe's bet on a chariot race. But you'll never know. You can't read a single glyph. You watch the scribe's pen dance, each stroke precise, and feel a pang of envy. His hands are soft, unblistered, unlike yours, raw from chisels and nets, but his world's not yours. And you're not sure you'd trade the Nile's open air for a stuffy office, even if it means a cleaner kilt. The scribe weighs your barley, his balance scale clinking, and scribbles on a scroll. His pens scratch louder than the Nile's hum. You stand still, trying not to fidget, though your cut stings under the bandage. He mutters something about last year's flood, and you nod, hoping he doesn't dock your quota. Scribes hold your fate in their ink, miswrite a number, and you're short on rations. Anger one, and your tax is double. You've heard of a farmer banned from the market for arguing with a scribe, and you're not about to test this one's patience. You bow again, muttering thanks to Thoth, god of writing, for a smooth delivery. The scribe waves you off, already onto the next scroll, and you back out, relieved to escape his sharp gaze. You joke to yourself that if Anubis weighs your heart someday, you hope he's less picky than this guy. The gods are close here, their presence woven into the scribe's work. A small shrine to Thoth sits in the corner, its ibis-headed statue flanked by a reed pen and a dried lotus. You toss a pebble at its base, whispering for wisdom, though you'd settle for a scribe's mistake in your favor. Religion's your shadow. Skip a prayer, and you might bring a curse or a bad harvest. Historians still argue whether scribes saw themselves as servants of the gods or bureaucrats with divine perks. You don't care about their motives. You know what happens when Thoth's ignored. A neighbor once mocked a scribe's offering, and his taxes tripled, his fields audited by temple guards. You're not risking it. Not when your family's barley's on the line. Outside, Thebes hums, merchants shout, donkeys bray. A priest's chant drifts from the temple. You spot that fisherman by the market, haggling over tilapia, and narrow your eyes, still plotting to reclaim that basket. Maybe tomorrow, over a beer. For now, you head home. The barley sack gone, but your shoulders lighter. The Nile's a golden ribbon now, reflecting the sun's climb, and reeds sway like they're waving you on. You think of your kids, their laughter when you toss them in the air, and your spouse, probably scaling fish for tonight's stew. Scribes may write Egypt's story, but you live it. Fields, nets, prayers, and all. You joke to yourself that if you could write, you'd pen a tale about a farmer outsmarting a scribe, but you're content with your hoe and a good catch. The village draws near, its mud brick huts glowing under the morning light, the air alive with the buzz of daily life, potters' wheels whirring, kids chasing dogs. The Nile's hum, a steady pulse. You're not a scribe or a priest, just a man with a bandaged hand and a prayer for tomorrow. The scribe's scrolls hold secrets you'll never read, but your life's written in the soil, the river, the smiles of your kids. You keep walking, Thoth's shadow at your back, the Nile's song in your ears, and a quiet hope that tonight's dinner won't end with a tax notice or a scorpion in your mat. Section 15. Festivals and Feasts. You're back in the village. The scribe's office and its papyrus scrolls a fading memory as you step into the familiar hum of mud brick huts and Nile reeds. The sun's high, warming the earth, but a festive buzz cuts through the usual rhythm of hoes and potters' wheels. Today's no ordinary day. It's a festival for Bastet, the cat goddess of protection and joy. And the village is alive with anticipation. Your kilt's still dusty from the barley delivery, but you brush it off, hoping to look presentable. Your spouse is already at the riverbank, preparing offerings, and your kids are bouncing with excitement, clutching reed, woven toys shaped like cats. You grab a small clay jar of beer from your hut, a rare treat saved for the gods, and head toward the festival grounds, joking to yourself that if Bastet's pleased, maybe she'll convince that fisherman to return your borrowed basket. The path to the riverbank is crowded, villagers streaming in with baskets of bread, figs, and fish, their voices mingling with laughter and the jingle of sistrums. Hathor's sacred rattles. The air smells of baked barley and myrrh, with a faint tang of Nile mud underfoot. Reeds sway, decked with lotus flowers, and a makeshift shrine to Bastet stands by the water. Its clay statue, adorned with copper amulets and fresh reeds, women dance in linen dresses, their movements fluid like the river, while men drum on stretched hides, the beat quickening your pulse. Your kids dart ahead, joining a gaggle of children waving reed cats. And you smile, catching your spouse's eye as they offer a loaf to the shrine. You set your beer jar beside it, bowing to Bastet, and mutter a prayer for your family's safety. You're no priest, but in Egypt, every offering's a plea for divine favor. Mainstream fact: by 2500 BCE, festivals were central to Egyptian life, honoring gods like Bastet with music, dance, and feasts that strengthened community bonds and pleased the divine. Often tied to the Nile's cycles or harvests, temples distributed food and beer, drawing crowds from villages. Here's a lesser-known detail during Bastet's festivals. Cats were pampered with extra fish and even adorned with tiny amulets, treated as living links to the goddess. You glance at your village cat, lounging by the shrine like royalty, a fishtail dangling from its mouth. You joke to yourself that it's getting more respect than you. But you're not about to argue with Bastet's favorite. You've seen what happens when cats are mistreated. A neighbor once shooed one from his hut, and his crops withered. Coincidence? You're not testing it. The festival's in full swing now. The drumbeat, pulsing like Egypt's heartbeat. You join the crowd, clapping as dancers swirl, their anklets jingling. Your spouse hands you a hunk of festival bread, sweet with dates, and you bite into it, crumbs falling like offerings to the ground. A priest in a white robe pours beer into the Nile, chanting for Bastet's joy, and the crowd cheers. Kids splashing at the river's edge. You keep an eye on yours, warning them to stay clear of deeper water. Sobek's not invited. But crocodile don't RSVP. You spot that fisherman nearby, dancing with a jug of beer, and narrow your eyes, tempted to confront him about the basket. But the festival's too lively, and you let it go, promising to settle it another day. You take a sip from a shared beer jar, its sour kick softened by the mood, and feel the day's weight lift. The gods are everywhere, their presence woven into the dance, the offerings, the laughter. You notice a woman place a copper cat amulet at Bastet's shrine, whispering for a safe childbirth. You touch the faience scarab at your neck, your own charm for health, and pray for your kid's safety. Religion's your lifeline. Skip a prayer, and you might invite chaos or a curse. Historians still argue whether festivals were heartfelt worship or social escapes for overworked villagers. You don't care about the debate. You know what happens when Bastet's ignored. Last festival, A man mocked her shrine, and his boat sank the next day. You're not risking it. Not when your family's dancing under her gaze. The sun's dipping, casting a golden glow over the river, and the festival shifts to feasting. Villagers spread mats by the bank, sharing bread, fish, and figs. You sit with your family, your kids munching happily, your spouse leaning against you, their warmth a quiet anchor. The drums soften, replaced by a flute's haunting melody, and you feel Egypt's magic gods. River, community, pulse through you. You think of the scribe's scrolls, the quarry's dust, the net's weight. But here, you're rich in moments like this. You joke to yourself that if Thoth gave you a festival every day, you'd never hoe another field. Then you remember scorpions and decide work's safer. Your youngest yawns, clutching their reed cat. And you know bedtime's near. The Nile's hum blends with the flute. A lullaby older than the pyramids. You share a final sip of beer, its warmth spreading like Bastit's blessing. The crowd thins. Villagers drifting home, their voices soft under the stars. You spot the fisherman, still swaying, and decide he's too drunk to argue with tonight. Tomorrow, you'll get that basket back, maybe with a fish thrown in. You gather your kids, their eyes heavy, and head home. The shrine's glow fading behind you. The village settles, dogs bark. Stars shine. The Nile sings on. You're not a priest or a pharaoh, just a man with a family, a full stomach, and a prayer for tomorrow. Bastet's watching, her cat's prowling the night, and you hope your offering's enough to keep her smile on your hut. Section 16. Tombs and the Afterlife. You wake the morning after Bastet's festival. The taste of sweet date bread and sour beer lingering like a dream. The Nile's soft hum filters through your mud brick hut, and dawn's light creeps across the reed mat, where your kids still sleep, clutching their reed cat toys. Your spouse is up, stirring the oven's embers, and the cat, ever regal, watches from a stool, its tail flicking like it's judging your late rise. Your kilt's stiff with festival dust, and your hand's cut feels better under its honey bandage. A small mercy you thank Isis for. Today's different. You're not headed to the fields or the river. You've been called to a worksite near Thebes, where laborers are carving a tomb in the limestone cliffs for a noble, a step toward his journey to the Duat. The afterlife. You grab your chisel, sling a basket with a hunk of bread, and head out, joking to yourself that if Anubis is waiting at the tomb, you'll bribe him with a fish to let you keep chiseling. The path winds past the Nile, its waters glinting under a sun that's already climbing, warming the reeds that brush your legs. The air smells of mud and lotus, with a faint tang of myrrh from a distant temple. You pass a sycamore, nodding to a Be's shrine tucked at its roots, and mutter a prayer for safe work. Tombs are sacred, but they're dangerous. Loose stones, dark shafts, and the ever-present gaze of the gods. You reach the cliffs, a jagged wall glowing gold against the desert's edge, where workers swarm like ants, their chisels clinking and dust swirling. The tomb's entrance is a shadowed maw, its walls half-carved with hieroglyphs and gods. Osiris, Anubis, Ma'at watching silently. You pose, bowing to the unseen, and feel a chill, as if the Duat's breath has touched you. You joke to yourself that if Horus is watching, he'd better keep the rocks from falling on your head. Mainstream fact by 2500 BCE. Ancient Egyptians were obsessed with the afterlife, building tombs from simple pits to elaborate rock-cut chambers for nobles and pharaohs, filled with goods and spells to ensure eternal life. The belief in a judgment by Osiris and a journey through the Duat shaped their culture Here's a lesser-known detail: workers often left small votive offerings, like clay figurines or amulets, in unfinished tombs, hoping to gain favor with the dead or their gods. You notice a tiny faience scarab tucked in a crevice, probably left by a mason, and add a pebble, whispering to Osiris for protection. You're no priest, but you've heard stories of tombs cursing careless workers, fevers, fights, or worse. You're not about to anger the dead. Not when your kids need you home tonight. You step into the tomb, the air cool and heavy, smelling of stone dust and damp earth. Torches flicker, casting shadows that dance like spirits. And you grip your chisel, joining a team, carving a wall relief of the noble's soul before Osiris. Your hands move carefully, each chip a prayer, because a misstroke could ruin the spell etched here, dooming the noble's afterlife. The foreman, his voice echoing, urges precision, and you focus, sweat beading despite the cool. A mason nearby, tar from the quarry, jabs that your carving looks like a drunk ibis's scrawl. You fire back that his chisel's so dull it could be a spoon, and he laughs, the sound swallowed by the tomb's depths. The banter keeps you steady, but you're aware of the weight here, stone. Gods, eternity. You think of your own afterlife, a simpler pit, if you're lucky, and wonder if your soul could afford the ferryman's fee to cross the Duat's river. The gods are closer here, their presence carved into every wall. Anubis's jackal eyes seem to follow your chisel, and you mutter a prayer for steady hands. Religion's your guide, skip a prayer, and you might trap a soul or curse your own. Historians still argue whether Egyptians feared the afterlife or embraced it as a continuation of life. You don't care about the debate. You know what happens when Osiris is ignored. A worker once defaced a tomb's spell, and his child fell ill. The village, whispering of divine wrath. You're not risking it. Not when your family's waiting. You carve Mut's feather, symbol of truth, and feel her gaze, as if she's weighing your heart already. You joke to yourself that if she's judging, you hope she overlooks that time. You shorted a neighbor, an onion. The tomb's half done, its chambers stretching into darkness. And you wonder about the noble it's for. He's probably sipping beer in a Thebes villa, while you chip away his eternity. You've seen his kind at festivals, draped in linen, finer than your entire hut. Still, death equalizes. His soul will face Anubis like yours. No gold to bribe the scales. You spot that fisherman delivering water to the site, his jug sloshing, and give him a hard stare about that basket. He ducks behind a sledge, and you smirk, planning to settle it at the market. For now, you focus on the relief. Your chisels clink, a small hymn to the gods. The torchlight flickers, shadows shifting, and you feel the duat's pull, a reminder that every life's a step toward judgment. The sun's high outside, but in here, time's a shadow. You're tired, hands cramping, but proud of the feather's curve you've carved. This tomb will outlast you, a noble's bridge to eternity, and your mark's in it, however small. You think of your kids, their laughter, your spouse's stew, and know they're your real eternity. You joke to yourself that if Thoth gave you a tomb, you'd carve a fish on it, not a feather. The foreman calls a break, and you step outside, blinking in the sun, the Nile's hum welcoming you back. The cliffs loom, the tomb's secrets safe within, and you're just a man with a chisel, a prayer, and a hope that your soul's light enough for Ma'at's scales when the time comes. Section 17. Nighttime in the village. You trudge back from the tomb work site, your chisel tucked in your basket, its weight, a reminder of the day's labor, carving eternity for a noble you'll never meet. The Nile's hum follows you, a steady pulse under a sky now deepening to indigo, speckled with stars like scattered faience beads. The air's cool at last, carrying the scent of river mud and smouldering ovens. A relief after the sun's relentless hammer, your kilt stiff with dust and sweat, and your hands ache. The cut under its honey bandage, a faint throb, you thank Isis for easing. You're headed home to your mud brick hut, where your family waits. Their warmth, a beacon stronger than any temple's glow. You joke to yourself that if Ra's done for the day, he could lend you a star to light your path. But the moonlight's enough, casting shadows that dance like spirits across the reeds. The village emerges, its low huts huddled along the Nile's curve, their palm frond roofs silvered by the moon. You hear it first, a soft chorus of night sounds, crickets chirping, a dog's distant bark, the gentle slap of water against the bank. A few ovens still glow, their embers winking like Bess's eyes, and the faint laughter of kids drifts from a nearby hut. You pass a sycamore, its leaves rustling, a nod to a small shrine for Hathor, her clay figure adorned with a wilted lotus. You don't have an offering, but you touch its base, whispering thanks for a safe day. In Egypt, every moment's a prayer, and you're not about to tempt the gods now. Not when the night hides scorpions and worse. You think of that fisherman, probably asleep by his boat, and mutter that if he's dreaming, he'd better dream of returning your borrowed basket. You duck into your hut, the darkness cool and familiar, smelling of straw, lentils, and the faint tang of fish from last night's stew. Your spouse is by the oven, tending a small oil lamp, its flame flickering like a star brought indoors. Your kids are sprawled on the reed mat, the youngest clutching their clay hippo toy, the older one muttering a story about Horus's falcon wings. The cat, ever the guardian, lounges by the Be's shrine, its eyes catching the lamplight like twin moons. You collapse onto a stool, your bones sighing, and your spouse hands you a clay cup of water. Cool from the Nile, you sip, the earthy taste grounding you, and grin, joking that after today's tomb work, you smell like Anubis's jackal. They smirk, saying you're more like Sobek's swamp, and you laugh, the sound easing the day's weight. Mainstream fact, by 2500 BCE, Egyptian village life revolved around the Nile's rhythms, with nighttime a time for rest, storytelling, and family bonds, lit by oil lamps or moonlight in simple mud brick homes. Villages were tight-knit, sharing labor and rituals under the gods' gaze. Here's a lesser-known detail. Egyptians often told myths at night to teach children about gods and morality, using tales of Isis's cunning or Set's chaos to instill values. You settle on the mat, your kids crowding close, and spin a story about Baste outsmarting a serpent, her claws gleaming like stars. Their eyes widen, and you embellish, adding a cat who looks suspiciously like your own. Lounging nearby, you're no scribe, but these stories are your scrolls, written in their giggles and gasps. You lean back, the lamp's glow softening the hut's edges, and pass around a hunk of leftover festival bread. Its date, sweet crust, a treat in the quiet night. Your spouse shares a tale from their childhood, about a festival where Hathor's sistrum silenced a storm. You listen, the Nile's hum weaving through their words, and feel Egypt's magic gods. River, family pulse in this small space. The Be's shrine watches, its clay figure fierce against night's unseen dangers, and you add a reed to its base, whispering for protection. Religion's your heartbeat, skip a prayer, and you might invite a demon or a jackal's howl. Historians still argue whether nighttime rituals were fervent belief or habit to calm fears of the dark. You don't care about the debate. You know what happens when bees is ignored? A neighbor once skipped an offering, and a scorpion stung his child. You're not risking it. Not when your kids sleep so close. The village kayaks. Its sounds fading to a soft drone, frogs croaking. The Nile's lap. A distant flute playing a lullaby. You think of the tomb, its shadowed walls, and wonder about the duat, where Osiris waits. Will your soul pass Ma'at's scales? You touch the faience scarab at your neck. Its spell for health, a small comfort. You're not a noble with a carved tomb, just a man with a hoe, a net, and a family to guard. You joke to yourself that if Thoth gave you a scribe's pen, you'd write a spell to keep scorpions out of your mat. The cat stirs, stretching like it's blessing the night, and you warn it not to knock over the lamp. Your spouse laughs, and your kids yawn, their eyes heavy with sleep. You douse the lamp, its flame hissing out, and settle on the mat. Your family's warmth a shield against the night's chill. The Nile's hum fills the dark, a song older than the stars, and you feel the gods gaze Hathor's kindness, Bess's vigilance, Anubis's quiet watch. You think of the fisherman, the quarry, the festival's drums. But here, in this hut, you're whole, your kids' breaths slow, your spouse's hand rests on yours, and you drift, the river's lullaby pulling you under. You're not a pharaoh or a priest, just a man with a story, a prayer, and a hope that dawn won't bring a curse or a flood. The night wraps you, Bess guards your dreams, and the Nile sings on, carrying you toward tomorrow. Section 18. Dreams of the Pharaoh. You stir on the reed mat, the Nile's gentle hum seeping into your dreams, a distant lullaby blending with the soft breaths of your sleeping kids. The hut's dark, wrapped in the cool embrace of night, the air heavy with straw and the faint smoky trace of the doused oil lamp. Your spouse slumbers beside you, their warmth a quiet anchor, while the cat, ever vigilant, curls by the bee's shrine, its eyes catching stray moonlight like tiny stars. Your body's heavy, aching from days of chisels, nets, and taxes, but your mind drifts, untethered, to a dream of a pharaoh's palace, a world of gold and lotus columns far from your mud-brick life. You're not sure what sparked it, maybe the tomb's carvings, the scribe's scrolls, or Bastet's festival, but you linger in the vision. Half awake, half lost, you joke to yourself that if Thoth's weaving your dreams, he could throw in a new kilt instead of teasing you with palaces. In your dream, you stand in a courtyard vast as the Nile's floodplain, its floor painted with lilies and fish, gleaming under a sun that doesn't burn, but blesses. Pillars rise like petrified papyrus, capped with lotus buds, and priests in white linen chant hymns to Amun, their voices soft as a sistrum's jingle. You're not a labourer here, but a guest. Your kilt fine and clean, your hands unblistered, holding a goblet of wine that tastes like Hathor's laughter. The pharaoh, faceless but radiant, sits on a throne of ebony, his golden collar flashing like Ra's own light. He nods to you, as if you're more than a farmer, and you feel a swell of pride, like you've carved his eternity, not in stone, but in your soul. You know it's a fantasy. Pharaohs don't dine with men like you, but the dream's so vivid you can smell the myrrh. Feel the cool marble under your feet. Mainstream fact: by 2500 BCE, pharaohs were seen as living gods, ruling as intermediaries between the divine and mortal worlds. Their palaces in cities like Thebes or Memphis serving as centers of power, religion, and wealth. They oversaw Egypt's prosperity. From Nile floods to pyramid construction, here's a lesser-known detail. Commoners like you rarely saw the pharaoh, but his image was everywhere on temple walls. Amulets, even market seals, making him a distant yet constant presence. Like a star you navigate by, but never touch. In your dream, he's close, almost human, and you wonder what he dreams of eternity. Or just a day without scribes pestering him. You smile, imagining him haggling over a basket like you do with that fisherman. The dream shifts. The palace fading to a banquet hall, where nobles feast on roast duck and figs, their laughter echoing like a festival drum. You're still there, somehow, sipping wine, watching dancers swirl in linen, finer than your entire village's wardrobe. A priestess of Hathor offers you a lotus flower, her eyes kind, and you take it. Its petals, soft as your kids' cheeks. You think of them, asleep in your hut, and the dream wavers. The palace's glow dimming as reality tugs you back. You're no noble, just a man with a hoe and a fish-stained basket. But the dream's a gift, a glimpse of a world you'll never live, but can visit in the night. You joke to yourself that if Anubis guards dreams, he'd better not charge you for this one. The gods are woven into your vision, their presence as real as the Nile's hum. In the dream, you pass a shrine to Osiris, his green face carved in gold, and bow, feeling Ma'at's feather light on your heart. Religion's your compass. Even in sleep, skip a prayer, and you might wander lost in the duat. Historians still argue whether Egyptians dreamed of gods as divine encounters or mere reflections of daily worship. You don't care about the debate. You know what happens when the gods are ignored. A neighbor once dreamed of Set's chaos and woke to a flooded field. The village whispering of divine warning. You're not risking it. Not when your family's safety rides on your prayers. Awake or dreaming, the hut's sounds pull you further from the palace. Your youngest mumbles in their sleep. The cat shifts. A frog croaks outside. You open your eyes. The dream's gold fading to the hut's familiar dark. The Nile's hum clearer now. Your spouse's hand rests on yours. And you smile, grounding yourself in their warmth. The palace was beautiful. But this, your kids, your hut, your life, is your real treasure. You think of the fisherman, probably dreaming of tilapia, and chuckle, still plotting to reclaim that basket at the market. Maybe you'll trade a dream-inspired tale for it, and spin a story of pharaohs and lotus wine. You touch the faience scarab at your neck, its spell for health, a quiet comfort, and settle back, the mat creaking under you. The village sleeps. Its night sounds, a soft chorus, crickets, the Nile's lap, a distant dog's bark. You think of the tomb, the scribe's scrolls, Bastet's drums. But here, you're whole. Your family's breath's a lullaby stronger than any priest's chant. You joke to yourself that if Thoth gave you a pharaoh's life, you'd trade it for a night like this. No scorpions or floods. The cat yawns, its eyes catching moonlight, and you warn it not to steal your dreams. You drift again, the Nile's song pulling you under. The palace's glow, a faint echo. You're not a king or a priest, just a man with a family, a prayer, and a hope that dawn won't wake you to a noble's tomb, but to your kids' laughter and the river's endless hum. Section 19. Surviving another day, you wake to the Nile's faint hum. The dream of Pharaoh's palaces, fading like mist under Ra's first rays. The hut's dim, wrapped in dawn's cool embrace. The air smelling of straw, and the faint char of last night's oven embers. Your kids are still asleep on the reed mat, their faces soft. The clay hippo toy clutched tight. Your spouse stirs, already rising to coax the oven to life, while the cat, ever the silent sentinel, watches from the BE's shrine, its eyes catching the light like polished faience, your kilt stiff with the grime of tombs, nets, and festivals, and your hands cut, now a dull ache under its honey bandage, feels like a small victory over Sekhmet's wrath. You stretch, your spine cracking like a dry reed, and pull on your kilt, ready to face another day. You joke to yourself that if Thoth's tallying your survival, you're due a free beer for making it this far without stepping on a sacred scarab. You step outside, the village stirring under a sky, blushing lotus pink. The Nile glints. Its waters, a lifeline you thank happy for. And reeds sway, whispering secrets, or maybe just mocking your dusty feet. A heron lifts off, wings slicing the air, and you bow your head, wondering if Horus is watching. Today's a return to the fields. Your barley needs hoeing, and the Nile's silt waits for your sweat. You grab your wooden hoe, its handle worn smooth by years of toil, and head to your plot. The path familiar as your kids' laughter. The air's alive with village sounds, women carrying water jars, kids chasing a stray dog, your neighbor cursing his donkey's stubborn streak. You nod to him, joking that his beast's more sacred than half the temple's cats. And he laughs, though you both know the day's work won't be kind. Mainstream fact by 2500 BCE. Survival in ancient Egypt hinged on the Nile's annual floods, which enriched the soil for crops like barley and emmer wheat, sustaining millions through careful farming and storage. Villages like yours were self-reliant, tied to the river's rhythms and the gods' favor. Here's a lesser-known detail: farmers often used small clay figurines, called shaptis, buried in fields as offerings to ensure fertility, believing they'd work the land in the afterlife for the gods. You've got one in your field, a crude figure shaped like a worker, tucked under the silt last season. You pass it now, half buried, and touch it, whispering to Osiris for a strong harvest. You're no priest, but you've seen barren fields after skipped offerings, and you're not about to tempt a famine. You sink your hoe into the soil, the black silt soft and cool, a gift from Happy's floods. Each swing's a rhythm, your breath matching the Nile's pulse. Though your back aches and sweat beads on your brow, an ibis struts nearby, probing the mud, and you smile, wondering if it's Thoth's spy or just hungry. You're wary of pests, locusts, mice, or worse, and mutter a prayer to Renenutet, goddess of the harvest, to keep them at bay. You've seen floods fail, fields wither, families forced to sell kids to temples. When hunger hit, you're determined to keep your plot, your family fed, even if it means hoeing until your hands bleed. You joke to yourself that if Ra gave you a day without work, you'd spend it fishing. Then you remember hippos and decide the field's safer. The gods are your constant shadow, their gaze woven into every row you dig. A small shrine to Hathor sits at the field's edge, its clay figure adorned with a wilted reed. You add a pebble, whispering, "Thanks for yesterday's festival," because every day's survival feels like their gift. Religions, your armor, skip a prayer, and you might invite locusts or a fever. Historians still argue whether Egyptians lived in fear of divine wrath or saw gods as partners in survival. You don't care about the debate. You know what happens when the gods are ignored. A neighbor once skipped Renenutet's offering, and his barley rotted. You're not risking it. Not when your kids' bellies depend on this soil. The sun climbs, turning the air thick, and you wipe sweat from your eyes, your kilt soaked through. You spot that fisherman by the river, hauling nets, and give him a hard stare about that borrowed basket. He waves. All innocence. And you roll your eyes, planning to settle it at the market, maybe with a fish thrown in for peace. Your neighbour's in his field, hoeing with a grunt, and you shout a jab about his patchy barley. He fires back that your plot's so dry, it could be a desert. And you laugh. The banter, a small spark in the day's grind. You think of the tomb, the scribe's scrolls, bust its drum. But here, in the field, you're rooted. Your hoe, carving life from the Nile's gift. The village hums potter's wheels whir. Women sing by the river. A kid's shout echoes like your own childhood. You're tired, but the field's promise keeps you moving barley for bread, for taxes, for your kids' smiles. You're not a pharaoh or a scribe, just a man with a hoe, a prayer, and a family to guard. You joke to yourself that if Anubis comes today, you'll offer him your neighbour's donkey to leave you be. The ibis moves on. The Nile sings. And you keep hoeing, one row at a time. Under the god's gaze, another day survived. Another step toward harvest. And a quiet hope that tomorrow won't bring a flood, a pest, or a scorpion in your sandals. Section 20. Farewell to the Nile. You set down your hoe. The Nile's rich silt still clinging to your hands as the sun dips low, painting the sky in soft hues of amber and star-dusted blue. The field's quiet now. Your barley rows carved with care, a promise of harvest under Renanutet's watchful gaze. Your kilts heavy with sweat and dust. Your back a map of aches from days of toil fields. Nets, tombs, and taxes. The air's cool at last. A gentle breeze carrying the scent of reeds and river water. A whisper of peace after Ra's relentless heat. You're done for the day, and the village calls you home. But you linger by the Nile, to its hum, a lullaby that's carried you through another day of survival. You joke to yourself that if Thoth's keeping score, you've earned a nap long enough to dream of lotus flowers. Not just Pharaoh's palaces. You sit on the bank, toes sinking into the cool mud. The river's edge a soft cradle under the gathering stars. Reeds sway, their tips silvered by moonlight, and a frog croaks nearby, its song blending with the water's gentle lap. The Nile's alive, a ribbon of life stretching through Egypt's heart, and you feel its pulse, steady as your own. You think of Hapi, the river's god, whose floods feed your fields, and toss a pebble into the water, a quiet thanks for his mercy. The stars above are countless, like the grains of barley you've sown, each a story, a prayer, a life. You're no scribe to write them, no priest to chant their names, but you're part of this tapestry, woven with sweat, fish, and festival drums. You smile, wondering if that fisherman's dreaming of your borrowed basket, and decide to let it go. Tomorrow's market will settle it. Maybe with a shared beer. Mainstream fact. By 2500 BCE, the Nile was Egypt's lifeline, sustaining agriculture, trade, and life itself. Its predictable floods enabling a civilization that built pyramids and temples, while villages like yours thrived in its embrace. The river was sacred, a gift from the gods. Here's a lesser-known detail. Egyptians believed the Nile mirrored a cosmic river in the Duat, where souls sailed to Osiris's judgment, its waters linking life and afterlife. You've heard fishermen whisper of ghostly lights on the river at night, spirits crossing to eternity. And though you've never seen them, you don't swim after dusk. You touch the faience scarab at your neck, its spell for health, a small shield, and pray your soul's light enough for Ma'at's scales when the time comes. The village hums softly in the distance, mothers calling kids, a flute's faint melody, The creak of a potter's wheel winding down. You think of your hut, your spouse's warm smile, your kids' laughter as they chase that cat who thinks it's bastard reborn. They're your eternity, not some noble's tomb or pharaoh's scroll. You've faced floods, scorpions, and scribes, survived another day, under the god's gaze Hathor's kindness, Shobek's shadow, Anubis's quiet watch. You're proud, not of grand deeds, but of small ones, a fish stew shared, a row hoed, a story told under starlight. You joke to yourself that if Anubis comes tonight, you'll offer him a reed cat toy to leave you be. The Nile's hum wraps you, a song older than the gods, and you feel whole, rooted in this moment. The stars brighten, their light dancing on the river, and you lean back, the earth cool beneath you. Your aches fade, softened by the night's gentle hand, and you let your thoughts drift, slow and calm. Like a papyrus boat on the current, you see your kids' faces, their eyes wide with Bastei's tales, your spouse's hand in yours, the field's promise of bread, Egypt's a hard land mud, heat, gods who don't blink but it's yours, and you've carved a life here. One prayer, one fish, one row at a time. Historians still argue whether Egyptians lived for the afterlife or cherished the present's fleeting joys. You don't need their scrolls to know the answer. You feel it in the Nile's song, the village's heartbeat, the love that binds your hut. Your eyelids grow heavy, the river's lullaby pulling you towards sleep. Its rhythm, a cradle rocking you gently. The reeds whisper, the stars watch, and you feel the gods' presence, not as judges but as companions in this endless dance. You think of the tomb's shadows, the scribe's ink, the festival's drums, but they're distant now, echoes in a life rich with simpler truths. You're no pharaoh, no priest, just a man with a family, a field, and a river that sings you home. The Nile's hum grows softer, a melody fading into dreams, and you let go, trusting bees to guard your sleep, happy to guide the waters, and tomorrow to rise with new light. Your breath slows, the stars blur, and the river carries you, a soul at rest, into the night's embrace.